Hey folks, it's Cody Stoffer with Playmakers Corner, here to tell you about Code Red coaching. Competing in athletics means you've lifted the weights, you've watched film, and you've got the passion. Problem is, that's what everyone else in the state has done. Perfect your game by honing in on your mental performance with Code Red coaching. Whether you are a team or an individual, Code Red coaching has the tools to create mentally solid habits and set up you or your team for success. Find Code Red Coaching at coderedcoaching.com or call 720-979-1914 to learn more today. That's coderedcoaching.com or 720-979-1914 today. Now back to the show.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? This is Phoenix Barons here to give the 1A Week 8 recap. We got a lot of games to get through. We're almost close to the end of the season, so a lot of big games and a lot of teams to look out for as we near the end of the regular season. So let's get started. Starting off Thursday, October 17th. Before we get into it, as of this recording, Monday morning, October 21st, some teams have not uploaded their stats, some teams have, so we're just going off of what we know right now. Let's get right into it. Thursday, October 17th, we got a couple games to talk about. Manual at Platte Valley. Fortunately, Platte Valley has not uploaded any stats in this game, but it was a dominating performance from them as Manual hit the road to Kersey. Platte Valley had a lot to prove. They haven't won a lot of big games so far, so they really needed to get a win to establish themselves in 1A, and they made a big statement, getting the win over Manual, 49-12. A good win for them. Great win for Platte Valley. Moving on, Dolores Huerta Prep at Peyton. Now, Dolores Huerta Prep forfeited last week, and they've done the same thing this week. Really unfortunate. Wanted to see how Peyton would do this week, but I guess they get a free bye week as Dolores Huerta Prep forfeited against Peyton. So Peyton gets the automatic win in that. And finally, Cedar Edge at Grand Valley. Now, this was definitely a tough matchup for both teams. No one was going to give an inch. It was a solid stalemate from both sides. But Cedar Edge was able to defeat Grand Valley on the road in a very, very close scoring match. So close, it was 8-7. Now, almost like a baseball score, but that was the final score for Cedar Edge at Grand Valley. Solid performances from Cedar Edge's number 20, Colton Mann, the junior, who had 20 carries for 127 yards. Also, number 2, Logan Sanders, the sophomore. Not so great through the air, having 4 of 11 for 27 yards and an interception. But on the ground, he was able to deliver the touchdown that the team needed to get their win, having 18 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown. He did fumble, but he was able to score and get the win for them. Also, shout out to number 60, Ty O'Connell, the junior, who had 4 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, and 1 sack. He had a pretty solid performance and a big contributor as to why Cedar Edge was able to hold off Grand Valley with that defense. Grand Valley, though, they still put up a fight. Number 13, Andrew Horner, the senior, 6 for 10 for 44 yards, as well as having 7 carries for 37 yards and the touchdown, the Grand Valley's lone touchdown in their matchup. Some solid performances from number 6, Mason Shopner, the senior, who had 9 carries for 72 yards, as well as 5 receptions for 40 yards. Defense, he had 2 sacks and 9 tackles, 6 of them solo, and 3 tackles for a loss. Big game from him. Also, number 4, Jason Skeen, the senior, had a carry for 4 yards, a reception for 18 yards, but on defense, he had 6 tackles, 1 interception for 30 yards on the return. So it was a solid back and forth, but Cedar Edge able to top Grand Valley. And that's all for the Thursday games. Moving on to Friday, October 18th. We'll start off with another forfeited game, Trinidad at Monte Vista. Trinidad forfeited their matchup at Monte Vista, and this is really tough for Monte Vista because they, I think Del Norte was the team that forfeited them last week. So back-to-back weeks on a forfeit. Really interested how Monte Vista bounces back, if they take advantage of these 2 breaks or if this will slow them down or cool them off. But we'll see how that goes for them in the future. But yeah, Free win for Monte Vista as Trinidad forfeited against them. Prospect Ridge Academy at Denver Christian. Now, we don't have any stats from Denver Christian, but this was a shocking win for sure. Prospect Ridge Academy came in as the favorite. Denver Christian has had some up and downs so far this season, including a loss to an 8-man team earlier this season. But they were able to defeat Prospect Ridge Academy by a staggering 51-20 score. Big win for Denver Christian and a very, very brutal loss for Prospect Ridge Academy that might affect them in the future, especially in their playoff seeding, if they even reach the playoffs after this one. Rye at Buena Vista. This was a good game for Buena Vista. They absolutely needed to go out there and prove themselves in 1A as one of the top teams, and they surely did that, getting the 35-0 shutout win. Huge performances from number 7, Hudson Wingo, the junior. 7 for 7, perfect in completions. Also 136 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was solid through the air. Got to give a shout out as well to number 3, Trey Cardwell, the senior, who had 12 carries for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as having 1 reception for 15 yards. He also had 3 tackles on defense, but a tackle for a loss and a fumble recovery. So did very well on defense as well. Also, shout out to number 21, Tucker Montoya, the junior, who had 2 receptions for 66 yards and 2 of those touchdowns from Hudson Wingo. Huge win for Buena Vista as they get the 5-touchdown shutout win. Meeker at North Fork. Now, this is going to be an interesting game for Meeker and North Fork. That league, it was down to these two teams, really. I mean, Meeker had a lot to prove after having back-to-back losses start their season, and they are still a trailblazing team, toppling North Fork on the road. Meeker getting the win 41-14. Number 11, Cade Mills, the sophomore, 3 for 3 for 54 yards and a touchdown, but it was on the ground. He also delivered, having 17 carries for 74 yards. And number 22, Clay Crawford, the senior, 7 carries for 119 yards and 3 touchdowns. Good performance from him. And Saeed Rodriguez, the sophomore, also having 4 carries for 48 yards and a touchdown. Beautiful performance from Meeker as they get the win. Shout out, though, to North Fork's number 1, Payson Peen, the senior. He only had 1 pass in 2 attempts, 1 completion in 2 attempts. That went 58 yards and a touchdown, 24 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown, as well as having 2 receptions for 27 yards, 162 yards total, 77 rush, 58 pass, 27 receiving. He was definitely their offensive firepower for North Fork, and also delivered on defense, having 6 tackles, but North Fork just could not get it done against Meeker as they fall short. Roaring Fork at Olith. Now, there are no stats from either teams in this one, but Roaring Fork was able to get the win on the road, toppling Olith 33-12. Good win for Roaring Fork. We'll see if they keep this momentum up, and they might be a team to look out for in the final playoff spots. Colorado Springs Christian at Ellicott. Colorado Springs Christian had a lot to prove. This was definitely a big-time matchup for them. And they went into Ellicott's house and took care of business. Absolutely destroyed Ellicott and the Thunderhawks, 59-12. Number 7, Jace Velasquez, the senior, had 7 completions and 12 attempts for 91 yards, but it was on the ground where he delivered the most, having 7 carries for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. And if that wasn't enough, they also gave the ball to number 40, Daniel Hoggard, the junior, who had 15 carries for 107 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was definitely the scoring magnet. He was definitely an end zone magnet for Colorado Springs Christian as they were able to get the win in Ellicott. Big win for them. Wiggins at Burlington. Now, there aren't really any stats for Burlington and Wiggins right now. Wiggins, they haven't submitted any of their offensive stats, just defensive stats. But this was also just like the Grand Valley Cedar Edge game. Really just 1 touchdown each, but down by 1 point. And Wiggins was able to go into Burlington's house and get the win, 7-6. This is a tough loss for Burlington, and this was a really close win for Wiggins. A little too close for comfort for them. We've seen them do well on the road. They traveled all the way to Meeker and got a win there. They made a long trip down to Burlington and got a win there this time, but this close win has got me concerned for Wiggins a little bit. They're one of the top 1A teams right now, and close wins like that, it's got me on the edge of my seat a little bit. But still, good win. A win's a win. Wiggins, the W in Wiggins stands for win, so that's what they were able to do in Burlington. Center at Ignacio. Now, no stats from either team as of this recording, but Ignacio did damage to center. Absolutely took care of them, did practically whatever they wanted with them, and was able to get a tremendous shutout at home, 50-0 against center. This was not even a matchup. This was not even a competition for Ignacio. They've had a lot of ups and downs this season, but they can clearly score when it matters the most, and they can definitely get the win. So yeah, good win for Ignacio as they get the 50-0 shutout over center. Big game now. Lyman at Ray. As of this recording, Lyman has not posted up any stats, but Ray definitely did because they were the dominating team in this one. This was definitely one of those preview matchups to one of the top ranked 1A teams right now. You had Ray and Lyman. I had them as my 1 and 2 all year, and this is practically not the state championship matchup because Lyman had a tough loss earlier this season against Holyoke last week, and Ray, they've remained perfect so far. Lyman, this is a new team, a little bit of a younger team. A lot of seniors are gone, and this is a bit of a building year for them. They've had a couple close wins, and now it's kind of later in the season. It's kind of catching up to them as they face tougher competition in Ray. And Ray is looking to be the top team right now in their league as they were able to defeat Lyman 42-7. Huge performances from number 1, Casey Midcap, the senior, who recently committed to Drake, I'm pretty sure, as told to me from Gideon. He had 4 for 10 for 57 yards, but it was on the ground where he did the most damage, having 10 carries for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also delivered on defense, having six tackles, 5 of which solo, 2 tackles for a loss. And he couldn't have done it without number 3, Samuel Meisner, who had 15 carries for 139 yards and 3 touchdowns to further extend their lead over Lyman. He also did well on defense, having 8 tackles, 6 of which solo, and 2 tackles for a loss, as well as a forced fumble to really turn the tides in their favor. And also got to give a shout out to number 19, Aaron Tina, the junior, who had 1 carry for 17 yards and a touchdown, as well as the 4 receptions from Casey Midcap for 57 yards. Great win from Ray, and this is definitely the team to beat right now in 1A. They've just established themselves as the top team now in 1A. They took down the powerhouse Lyman. They proved that Lyman is human. Now we got to wonder if Ray is human. We got to see what they're capable of. But that'll close out the Friday games. Let's move on to Saturday. We're going to talk about one last game. There was a forfeit really every single day so far because Del Norte at Centauri. As of this recording, the score has been missing, but I'm under the impression that Del Norte has been forfeiting the rest of their season because they forfeited like 5 wins in a row. They've only played their first game, week 1, against Olith, and have forfeited every single game since, and they were going to go to Centauri. So, tough for Centauri, not able to get some reps in their league, but they do get the free. I'm assuming that it's a free win. I'm assuming that that's what happened, but as of right now, the score is missing, so we really don't know what's going on with that game, but I'm under the impression right now that Centauri has the win because of Del Norte's consistent pattern of forfeiting matchups. And let's be real, Centauri would probably destroy Del Norte. They are also a top team right now, and with Lyman going down, it's really now down to Centauri and Ray as the top 2 teams in 1A. So we'll see what, if anything, is updated with that game. But I'm under the impression Del Norte forfeited, so that's how I'm going to look at that at that missing score. And moving on to another interesting matchup, the Pinnacle at a non-varsity opponent. Not sure who they faced. Max Preps does not recognize this team, and the Pinnacle just got handed a loss from them as well, losing 6-38 to this non-varsity opponent. Really tough for the Pinnacle. I mean, they've had a rough season so far, and this only makes it worse. But yeah, that's the score with that one. Pinnacle falls 38-6 to a non-varsity opponent. Moving on, Flatirons Academy at Platte Canyon. Now, we don't have stats for either team for this one, but this is definitely a good matchup between both teams. Flatirons Academy and Platte Canyon, both teams that are looking to get some spots in the playoffs this year. And Flatirons Academy came in with a vengeance and was able to get it done on the road against in Bailey, as they got the shutout win 40-0 over Platte Canyon. So a good win from Flatirons Academy as they get the W. Holyoke at Yuma. Holyoke coming off the win against powerhouse Lyman, now going into Yuma's house. And Yuma, they understand the task that's in front of them. They knew how much of a challenge Holyoke was going to be, but they knew how good they were too, and they went out there and proved it and defended their house. No stats from Holyoke as of this recording, but Yuma was able to, and we had some really top performances from number 1, Jonathan Thompson, the senior. Not through the air. He only had 1 completion out of 4 attempts that went 4 yards. But on the ground, 28 carries for 226 yards and 2 touchdowns. And also a solid performance from number 7, Christian Thompson, the sophomore, who had 6 carries for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both Thompsons having 4 touchdowns combined, but Christian had 2 interceptions on defense as well as 3 tackles. He did a very, very good job in their winning over Yuma, and is a big reason why they were able to get the win over Holyoke, 28-22. Good win for Yuma. And finally, Jefferson at Estes Park. Now, Jefferson has had an interesting season so far, a lot of ups and downs, but Jefferson was now traveling all the way to Estes Park for this one. And Estes Park, they've struggled all year, and it was not going to be easy for them, and it showed. Not able to defend their house against Jefferson, as number 11, Demetrius Martinez, threw all over them. 13 for 26 for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. He did throw 3 interceptions, though, so he was a little bit trigger happy on those throws. But on the ground, he had 16 carries for 145 yards and a touchdown. Over 300 yards of offense. What a performance from him. He also had an interception on defense. And his top receiver right now, number 8, Giano Gomez, the sophomore, having 5 receptions for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had himself 2 interceptions on defense as well. So a really shut down performance for Jefferson as they take down Estes Park 34-14. Now, that'll do it for the recap, and we'll finally kick it over to my Playmakers of the Week. And this was tricky. There was a lot of options here for sure for my Playmaker of the Week. I have 5 candidates for this one, actually. Usually I'll have 4, but I have to give 5 out there right now because there was a good showing from a lot of different schools and their wins. Starting off with Yuma's number 7, Christian Thompson. Sorry, Jonathan, got to give it to Christian this time because he had the 6 carries, 74 yards, and 2 touchdowns, but it was the 2 interceptions on defense that really stuck out to me. He was definitely a playmaker this week, so he is one of my candidates. Also, got to give it to Ray's number 3, Samuel Meisner, the senior, who had 15 carries for 139 yards and 3 touchdowns, and on defense having 8 tackles, 6 of which solo, 2 tackles for a loss, and a forced fumble. He had a solid performance for Ray in their takedown win over Lyman. And moving on, Colorado Springs Christian, I'm going to give it to number 40, Daniel Hoggard, the junior, who had 15 carries and 107 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had probably the most rushing touchdowns of the week by a running back in 1A, so he's definitely my playmaker candidate this week. And Buena Vista, number 3, Trey Cardwell, the senior. He had a pretty solid performance in their shutout win having 12 carries for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as 1 reception for 15 yards, but having 3 tackles, a tackle for a loss, and a fumble recovery. They were able to do practically whatever they wanted. And once again, another candidate appearance for number 11, Demetrius Martinez, the senior out of Jefferson, who had 13 completions in 26 attempts for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. The 3 interceptions kind of throws me off a little bit, but he was able to make up for it on the ground as well, having 16 carries for 145 yards and a touchdown, as well as having his interception on defense. Lots of great candidates for this one. It was a really good week of 1A football, so this is definitely a really, really hard decision for me to make. But I think I'm going to have to ride with I think what I'm going to have to do is ride with Ray's number 3, Samuel Meisner, who had 15 carries for 139 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as his 8 tackles, for 2 of which were for a loss and 1 forced fumble. His performance was a big reason as to why Ray was able to take down the top dogs in 1A linemen and able to get their team the win. He was able to get it done on both offense and defense, and for that reason, he is my playmaker of the week. So congratulations to Samuel Meisner, and that'll do it for me on this 1A Week 8 recap, and I will see you guys next week for Week 9. Thank you so much for listening. Hey, what is going on, everybody? This is Phoenix, and I'm here to give the breakdown of the current playoff picture in 1A going into Week 9. We just finished up a lot of games in Week 8, and as of this recording, October 21st, Monday, we are going to be talking about some of the future matchups as well as talking about the current playoff picture in 1A football. 1A football has been very, very special to me. It's what I played when I was in high school, a couple of years in Bennett. And, there was a lot of fun about 1A football playoffs. Nothing to like small town, just the small town energy and just the small school energy of going into the playoffs and fighting for the state championship. And we're about that point in the season now where we're going to start seeing the playoff picture kind of form a little bit more. But as of right now, I'm going to go ahead and go through the current playoff picture and talk about some of these teams' future games. Looking to start off, I want to go in the way that this bracket would be lined up. You have 1 versus 16, 9 versus 8, 5 versus 12, 13 versus 4, 3 versus 14, 11 versus 6, 7 versus 10, and then 15 versus 2. We're going to go through all the seedings and all the spots right now. If the season were to end today, but luckily it doesn't. We have a whole another week. We have a whole another couple weeks to talk about. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start off with the 1 and 16 matchup. So far, the number 1 seed in 1A is currently Forge Christian. Forge Christian have been undefeated all season. They've had a lot of great wins going into this season. They currently stand as probably the favorite to win the 1A Frontier League. Shutout wins over Wiggins, the Academy, Manitou Springs. They absolutely dog-walked Kent Denver. They shut out Flatirons Academy this past week. They're currently on a bye week, so last week they had their win against Flatirons Academy. This week they'll be hosting Platte Canyon. Platte Canyon currently right now they're sitting at 2-5, so they're not necessarily in the playoff picture as of right now, and they probably will not be in the playoff picture moving forward, which is really unfortunate for Platte Canyon. But it's a tough conference. It's a tough league right now between Forge Christian, Flatirons Academy, Denver Christian, Prospect Ridge Academy, and Platte Canyon. But as it stands right now, the 1 seed is currently Forge Christian. They would have to host the number 16 seed Monta Vista. And Monta Vista, they've had an interesting season so far. Going into this next week, they'll be going against Ignacio, who had a 50-0 shutout over Center. So they'll actually be able to play a game after these past couple weeks. Their opponents had forfeited against them. So right now they stand at 5-2 off of the back-to-back forfeits from Del Norte and Trinidad. And they're looking like the favorites to take over the league. But they still have Centauri on November 1st. So that'll be a lot of fun. If they are able to beat Centauri, their ranking may change from being the bottom to being one of the top 8 at least. It's interesting to keep your eyes on that. And the winner of the 1-16 seed will have to face the winner of the 9-8 seed. Currently standing at number 9 is Flatirons Academy. We were just talking about them. Had their last week they had lost Forge Christian. Past week they played Platte Canyon, actually, the team that Forge Christian will be playing this weekend. This past weekend they shut out Platte Canyon 40-0, and then the rest of their season so far they'll be looking at Denver Christian and Prospect Ridge Academy. So it is very likely that we'll be seeing Flatirons Academy in the playoffs. They will likely win out, but hey, Denver Christian caught Prospect Ridge Academy off guard this past weekend, so who knows with that matchup. But as it stands right now, Flatirons Academy is definitely a favorite to reaching the playoffs. And the number 8 seed they would have to be facing is Buena Vista. And Buena Vista is a very, very good team. As it stands right now, they are 3-0 in 1A Tri-Peaks. They just came off a shutout win over Rye, a shutout win over Ellicott to start off their league, and they had the Dolores Huerta Prep forfeit against them last week. The rest of their season, they have a really, really daunting task in front of them. Peyton and Colorado Springs Christian. So that'll be a really fun team to look out for going in. Who knows? They'll probably go, if they win out, we may see them go from 8 to the high top 5s. So we'll see about that. Moving on, the 5-12 seed as it stands right now, the 5 seed is Wiggins. Wiggins has been a really interesting team to keep an eye on this season. As it stands, they are 4-3, 2-1 in the 1A North Central. Shutout losses to Strasburg and Forge Christian. However, they did have a close loss to Lyman to start off their league play, 21-19, and then followed that up with wins against Yuma, and then a really close win, 7-6 against Burlington. But this is going to be a very tough task for Wiggins to stay in their seeding as of right now, because this upcoming weekend they'll be going into Holyoke and then finishing off the season against Ray, who is arguably the best team in 1A football right now. It'll be a really daunting task for them. The 12 seed, if the playoffs were to start right now, is Peyton. Peyton, they also have a very, very impressive record, but they with a 6-1 record in the Tri-Peaks, and they currently lead the Tri-Peaks as of right now, along with Buena Vista. And guess what? They're going to be playing each other this weekend. Buena Vista and Peyton, the 3-0 teams in the Tri-Peaks. Peyton, though, they're 6-1 overall, which gives them a little bit of leverage over Buena Vista, with their only loss coming to Flatirons Academy. So that could be a very interesting bracket to see with Peyton and Flatirons Academy if they're able to move on into the playoffs. Would be a really interesting rematch to see. But Peyton, as it stands right now, they got Buena Vista, and then they'll have Ellicott at the end of the season. So really, they just have to keep their eyes on Buena Vista. They beat Buena Vista, they practically take the Tri-Peaks. They practically take the Tri-Peaks League Championship. The 13-4 seed, this would be the team facing the winner of the 5-12 seed. This matchup, 13-4. Right now, the number 13 seed is Yuma, and they've had a very interesting season so far. They are coming off of a good win against Holyoke. Right now, they are 1-2 in the 1A North Central, so it's going to be really, really tough for them to come back and into the league, especially when you're sharing in the same league with Ray and Wiggins. Two really unfortunate losses in their league against Wiggins and Burlington to start off their league play. They will be facing Ray this weekend, and then they have a very daunting task facing Lyman November 1st. It'll be a very interesting matchup for them. And speaking of Lyman, that's exactly who is the number 4 seed if the playoffs were to start right now. Lyman are coming off back-to-back losses, which is something that has not been heard of in 1A football for many years. They are currently sitting at 1-2 in 1A North Central, back-to-back losses to Holyoke and Ray. So they really have to win out these matchups if they want to stay relevant in the playoff scene, because right now they are definitely a top team in 1A football, but they need to get these wins against Burlington and Yuma. And don't sleep on Burlington. They're able to keep it close with teams like Wiggins. And they're able to keep it close with teams like Wiggins and Yuma, and as well as Lamar. this is going to be an interesting matchup if the playoffs were to happen. But right now, 13 and 4 seed, Yuma and Lyman. And now we're going to the bottom half of the bracket. We kind of gone into the top half. Now we're going into the second half. Now we're going into the bottom half. Right now, the 3 and 14 seeds. So the 3 seed right now, as it stands, is Centauri. Centauri has had a very, very good season this year. It is hard to deny that. They are currently, if Ray isn't number 1, Centauri certainly is. They are definitely one of the teams to look out for. They will be going against Trinidad this upcoming week. To be dated. I mean, to be announced, because Trinidad had recently forfeited their last matchup against Monte Vista. So we'll see if that matchup even comes about. It's a really tough, the 1A South Central league they're currently standing in, Monte Vista and Centauri, with teams like Del Norte, Center, and Trinidad. Center just not very good at all. Del Norte have forfeited most of their season. Trinidad have been starting to forfeit some of their season, and Ignacio, they're able to play. They will play, but their overall record is definitely a detriment to them as of now. So Centauri, as it stands right now, Centauri is going to probably take the league championship. But Monte Vista, they're not too far behind. They actually are currently 3-0 in league, as well as Centauri. But we still have a missing score for the Centauri Del Norte game. Again, my assumption is in the recap is Del Norte is just forfeiting the rest of their season, because Del Norte has forfeited every single game they've ever been in since week 1. Week 1 they lost to Olith, and then they've just forfeited every single matchup they've had. So my guess is they probably forfeited against Centauri, but Centauri would have, as the 3 seed, would be facing the number 13 seed would be facing the number 14 seed in Holyoke. And Holyoke is also an interesting team to look out for. They were the first to drop Lyman down, the first team to defeat them, but their record right now at 2-3 is kind of interesting. It says they only have 7 games scheduled right now, so I don't know. Maybe less games will be a detriment to them going into the playoffs. They are a very, very good team, but they've had losses to Ray, losses to Yuma, and now they have Wiggins and Burlington left on their schedule. If they're able to win out, they'll stay in the playoffs. We shall see. Wiggins is another team just looking to go in the playoffs. So Wiggins and Holyoke this upcoming weekend will be a game to look out for, with major playoff implications on the line for both teams. Moving on to the 11 and 6 seed. This winner of this matchup would face the winner of the 3 and 14 seed matchup. 11 seed, as it stands right now, is Colorado Springs Christian. Now, they've also been a very, very fun team to look at going into the season. They currently stand at 4-3 this year, 2-1 in the Tri-Peaks. They started off the season against Lyman with a loss, and then they lost to Woodland Park, who is right now a 2A team. So losing to an undefeated 2A team by 3 in week 2 is not something to hang your hat on. They did have a very tough loss to Peyton October 11th, losing 13-12, but bounced right back on track, absolutely destroying Ellicott. And the rest of their season, they got Rye this upcoming week, and their final week, November 1st, will be Buena Vista, which will have huge playoff implications on the line in that one, as Buena Vista is looking to take the Tri-Peaks League Championship. And the number 6 seed is currently Highland. Highland have also had a very interesting season so far. They currently stand at 6-1, top of 1A League 6, alongside Platte Valley. But Platte Valley, currently right now, their record is 3-5. To Highland's 6-1, but all 3 of those wins have been in league, so they are currently undefeated in the league. And Highland will be going up against league opponent Jefferson this upcoming weekend. Jefferson have kind of been, they're a high-scoring offense. I mean, they like to play a lot. They like to They like to throw a lot. They like to do a lot of things. They like to move the ball around. And this will be a very interesting matchup for Jefferson, as they'll have to make the trip all the way to Alt for this upcoming matchup. And then November 1st will be Highland versus Platte Valley, and that will have major playoff implications that week. But as it stands right now, Highland currently in the number 6 seed. Moving on, 7 and 10 seed is Meeker and Burlington. Now, I have played against both of these teams. I've actually traveled against both of these teams. I've gone to Burlington and I've gone to Meeker. So Meeker is really lucky to be the higher seed right now in the first round, because you're Burlington, right? And Burlington is on the Kansas border. Like, you go to Burlington, you're driving on I-70 and you hit Burlington. The next town you will hit is Goodland, Kansas. That's how close they are to the Kansas border. They're practically on the Kansas border. That's why they have matchups against Kansas-based teams in non-conference. Now you look at Meeker. Meeker is pretty much on the Utah border. That's why they play Utah-based teams in non-conference. So Burlington would have to travel all the way across the state on I-70 to Burlington if this matchup were to happen. Now, if you're Meeker, you have that to your advantage. That's a tremendous home field advantage. But if you're Burlington, you are sweating. And the fact that Burlington is even in the playoff consideration right now is impressive, to say the least, because they've had some very tough losses this season. They are a highly regarded team in 1A right now. They aren't necessarily fighting for a league championship, as they are in the same league as Ray and Wiggins right now. So it'll be really interesting to see how the rest of their season unfolds, because they have Lyman and then they have Holyoke to finish off their season. So Burlington, if they want to stay in the playoffs, they have to beat Lyman in Lyman, and then they have to host Holyoke and win. Winning out will basically seal their playoff ticket. But they would have to face number 7 Meeker. And Meeker, they've had a tough season so far, going 0 for 2 to start off, but have gone 5 straight. And their 2 losses are to Centauri and Wiggins. But they were able to beat Gunnison, Grand County, Cedar Edge, and then open up league play, destroying Cedar Edge, shutting out Roaring Fork, and then this past weekend they beat North Fork 42-7. And their next games will be Olith and Grand Valley. So it's safe to say Meeker will likely win the 1A Western Slope League Championship. And whoever they face, good luck. You're going to have a long drive ahead of you. And then finally, 15 and the 2 seed. The winner of this matchup would face the winner of the 7 and 10 seed. Right now, as it stands, the 15 seed is Platte Valley. Right now, Platte Valley, they are 3-0 in league competition right now. So this will be a very tough matchup for them as they go to number 2, Ray. Ray right now has the 2 seed, and they would be hosting Platte Valley, which it's not too far away. I mean, Platte Valley is in Kersey, Ray is in Ray, so it's just in that little northeastern corner of Colorado. So it won't be too much of a travel for them, but it's still a tough team to face in Ray. And Platte Valley, they have struggled in non-conference. They've struggled and went 0-5 in non-conference. So it's actually impressive, to say the least, that Platte Valley is even considered in the playoffs, because they have been 3-0 in their league. Because right now, as it stands, Platte Valley is 3-5, but they're 3-0 in league with wins over Estes Park, Jefferson, and Manual. They don't have a matchup this weekend. They are currently on a bye, and next week they will be going up against Highland, with major playoff implications on the line for both teams. And that'll do it for my playoff pick, for the playoff picture right now, going into week 9 of 1A football. A lot of games to look out for, and I cannot wait to see how this next weekend transpires going into the final week of regular season next week. And I'll talk to you all next week for the results. See you around.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm your host for this segment. In today's episode, I'm Gideon, by the way. I realized I never said my name, but today we are going to be going over a Week 8 matchup between the Eaton Fighting Reds and the Wellington Eagles. And let me tell you all, this 2A North League is absolutely crazy. Yeah, a lot of upsets in that league. I'll be covering that later on in the later on. You guys will hear it because I did the 2A recap this week, but ultimately we have got a lot going on. So I am just going to get it started here. First, I'm going to go over Eaton's game along with an interview that I conducted with Eaton's player of the game for this one. Then I will go through Wellington's recap and a couple of the guys that came over when we were done talking there, and then I will go over what the rest of the season looks like for both of these squads and what everything is going to be in these two teams. But first, we are going to start with the team that eventually lost this game. We're going to start off with the Eaton Fighting Reds. On the first play of this game, Eaton would allow a 60-yard touchdown, going down 0-7 with 11 minutes 54 seconds left. On offense, Liam Whalen would run for 8, and then Andrew Lloyd would throw to Cooper Nider for 7. Nider would jet sweep for 10 himself, and then Lloyd would run for 8 before a fumble. Eaton then allowed a touchdown shortly after, going down 0-14 with 5:17 left in the first. After a 3-and-out, Eaton went down 0-21, still in the first quarter, but then Whalen would run for 50. Jackson Savona would run for 20, but that would end the first quarter for the Eaton Reds. Andrew Lloyd would then run in a touchdown with only 51 seconds having passed in the second, making it 7-21. On defense, the Reds went off sides, but ended up forcing a punt before Lloyd would throw to Max Blaskowski for 45. And after a timeout with 2:36 left, the Reds would end up committing a hold on a touchdown, so they had to settle for a Keenan Gallegos field goal attempt. This would make it 10-21 with 2:12 left, and on D, Nider would get a tackle for loss, but the Reds were allowing the offense to march down the field with the clock running out. Eaton would force a field goal attempt, which was out, and that was it for the half, though. After holding on the kickoff return, Cole Foster would run for 7, but the Reds ended up having to punt here. Eaton forced a field goal attempt on D, which was off again, and then Whalen ran 7 for himself. After allowing another touchdown, making it 10-28 with 4:19 in the third, Lloyd would run for 7, and after a holding call, the Reds would punt to enter the fourth. Austin Bright, a sophomore D lineman, would get a tackle for loss, and a couple plays later, not Bright, but one of the Eaton linebackers was given the most obvious offsides penalty I have ever seen. Man's just ended up running into the center while doing one of those stunts that linebackers do to make the center snap. It was kind of funny. But ultimately the Reds could not stop the run in this game, and they did end up allowing the last score with 2:19 left in the fourth quarter to end up losing this one 35-10. And although this was definitely not the result that Eaton wanted, I mean, this was a good fight. It's closer than the box score. Eaton made some good plays. You feel bad for their previous quarterback. Ended up tearing his ACL in the game against the Classical Academy, that being Connor Davey. But I think that Lloyd has done a pretty good job this year. There's one catch in particular where he was being chased down the right side, threw it up, and it ended up getting caught by one of his own players diving towards the ground. Absolutely insane play, the kind of one where I wish that I was on 2x Zoom instead of 3x Zoom. But in any case, I was able to catch a word with one of Eaton's star players, Cooper Nider, after the game. Cooper was one of the best DBs in the state last year. They've moved him a little bit more over to linebacker, but he's been having a pretty solid season. But here we are with Eaton's Cooper Nider. What's up? This is Gideon here with Cooper Nider of Eaton High School. Now, Cooper, not the result that you wanted, but everybody knew this league was going to be a bloodbath. When you're looking at this league, you got Res Christian beating Berthoud last night, you guys beating Res. What are you looking forward at for the rest of this league schedule?
I just think that we got to come back after this loss, and we got to get 2 dubs to get into playoffs. So we got to continue going hard, finish it out.
Fair enough. And when we are looking at the rest of at this game in particular, what lessons are you going to take from tonight that you're going to apply to the rest of the season?
We got to stay together as one the whole game. Even if bad play happens, we got to stay together, bring each other up. It just so nobody just pick each other up.
Fair enough. And to close her out, what would you say was your favorite moments of tonight from this game?
I don't know. It's a hard one. That first drive, it was pretty good, but came down to a bad snap to a fumble, which sucks. But that first drive really, it brought some light to my eyes that we can put stuff together to make good plays.
Oh yeah. Thank you very much, and best of luck.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much for stopping to talk with me and Phoenix, Cooper. It's always good to hear when a player like yourself, and for those of you listening out there, you should adopt this too, having that growth mindset of, listen, I know this wasn't a great game or a great performance, but we had flashes, and I know we can be better. And so it's good in my heart knowing that you're carrying that with you. And honestly, I'm not trying to blow smoke here, but it sounds like doing a pretty good job of being a leader on this team. And with how this league is, you need one, because Eaton lost to Wellington. Wellington lost to Berthoud. Berthoud lost to Res Christian. Res Christian lost to Eaton. The only odd teams out here are University and Valley, and University is only out because their best player got hurt and is out for the year. So this league could potentially have 4 playoff teams in it out of 6 members, which is kind of insane to me. But before we talk more about the rest of this season for both of these squads, we need to go over Wellington in this particular matchup. After Seamus Pike would return the opening kickoff for about 25 yards, Cash Alchfager would run a 50-yard touchdown in right off the bat. No joke, just first play of the game. This would put Wellington up 7-0 with 11:44. Tyler Schaefer got a sliding tackle, and then Owen Gabbert would deflect a pass before Kason Brown would recover a fumble. Eli Lavelle would throw to Schaefer on a weird distraction play where Jared Kennedy, the left tackle, lined up at receiver and not at tight end. I mean, he was on the right sideline, which was funny. I liked it. But this was a trick play. Schaefer would end up catching and running for about 45 yards. Kyle Kistner then ran in a touchdown, making it 14-0 with 5:17. Pike would get a sack, which helped force a 3-and-out, and Alchfager would run for 10 before Kistner would run for 12, and then a 10-yard touchdown by Kistner, putting the Eagles up 21-0 with 1:29 left in the first. In the second, after a holding call, Wellington would allow a touchdown, closing the gap to 21-7 with 11:09 left in the first half. The Eagles were getting about 5 yards per carry on offense, but after a holding call stalled momentum, Seth Long would punt. On D, after an offsides, Ian Allison would get a tackle for loss, and Wellington allowed a field goal attempt, making it 21-10 with 2:12 in the half. Alchfager would run for 20, and after a timeout with 1:10 and a holding call, Alchfager would run for 8 more, following Lavelle throwing to Schaefer for 10. After another timeout with 0:06 left, 6 seconds exactly, the Eagles would kick a field goal attempt that was no good. Matt Brown would recover a fumble to end the first half, and in the third quarter, Altschwager would deflect a pass, and John Borchardt would get a tackle for loss to force a punt. After another missed field goal attempt, Schaefer would deflect a pass to force a punt himself, and then Altschwager would run for another 60-yard touchdown, breaking some tackles and staying on his feet somehow to do it. This put Wellington up 28-10, and this game was honestly as good as done with 4:19 in the third. In the fourth, the Eagles would run the clock, but Kistner would run for 10 before Altschwager would cash his third check of the day. But ting! That would be with 2:19 left in the game to make it 35-10 for the Eagles in their first ever win over Eaton. To close it out, though, Liam Shearer would get a sack, and then Pike would get both a pass deflection and a pick to close it out. And honestly, this was a really, really good game from Wellington. A bunch of their good players are coming back next week. Thing is, I was on the sideline talking to some of their guys. Basically, their entire edge rusher rotation is hurt right now. Ezra Batjargle will be coming back from concussion protocol soon. Tegan Greiman will be coming back. A bunch of the guys are going to be back here, and these last two games are crucial in terms of playoff seeding for the Eagles. We'll get into that more in a minute here, though. I did manage to snag an interview with a bunch of the players from Wellington. What happened is that we called over a couple of their running backs, and they brought over some of their linemen. And I haven't experienced this before, but I was there with Phoenix Barons. A shout out to the homie, and he's had this happen before. I tried to get this as good as I can. I'm going to let you all know who's who when they talk after the first round of opening introductions. But here I am with Phoenix Barons as my co-reporter, along with Cash Altschwager, Kyle Kistner, Zach Swedland, Jared Kennedy, Gavin Mott, John Borchardt, Cameron Samuelson, and Ali Ashwabka.
What's up? This is Gideon here with a bunch of fellas from Wellington. Can I get a roll call left to right here?
Zach Swedland, right tackle.
Jared Kennedy, left tackle.
Kyle Kistner, running back.
Gavin Mott, center.
Cash Altschwager.
John Borchardt, left guard.
Cameron Samuelson, tight end.
Ali Schwabka, right guard.
All right, fellas. If I'm being honest, I'm not fully sure how to handle this one, but I guess I'm going to go with a group question here. All around, rushing touchdowns left and right today. Breakouts here from Cash and Kyle, but that cannot be done without the hard work from the O-line here. When you're looking at that experienced defensive line with a bunch of guys who played in state championships, what did you guys see that allowed you to consistently open up holes so big a Ford could go through them? I'll start over here.
They did some pretty good stunts. We had good pickups on a lot of pulls. We executed. We really got the down blocks, the angles we wanted. Get to backer, really just execute on the things we need, and watch film and get ready for next week.
I don't know what happened to you guys, no offense, but
We saw a lot of their film. We realized what they got, and we trusted our guys up front. We always knew we got it. We just knew how to execute, and our main goal was just protect our brothers.
we followed our rules, and that helped us a lot.
In coming week, we're told to stay on our angles, and that's what helped us pick up those stunts.
All right. Sorry, as I said, I've never done one like this before. Phoenix got this during
I have done this with Thompson Valley. It was kind of fun. It was kind of funny. The quarterback, he was crediting all the offensive line. And my question for you guys, you're getting into league competition right now, and you've been without your starting quarterback since the Canvas Classic. How important has it been for you guys to work as a cohesive unit in a chemistry, especially on a cold night like tonight, to get the win?
I'll go Cash on this.
It really came down to, since that Timoth game, we knew Eli was game ready since day one. We
watch him in JV games, and, that's the guy you're hyping up. And so to have Tanner still be at practice and coaching him up and giving him the advice that Tanner came into this offense and was like, whoa, that's different. And so I think Eli Lavelle he puts in the work, and even having Tanner out, like, this whole team we were a family.
All right. Kyle, for you in particular.
Yeah.
You've come into this season and just had a breakout year. I think tonight is going to make it. Is it going to make it double-digit touchdowns for you?
No, I think I got 7 on the
Seven?
Yeah, he's got the
Yeah, me and his parents talk about it. I know stats.
But still, 7 touchdowns for a first year starter. Pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. What was your feeling heading into the season, and what's your attitude moving forward through the rest?
Well, I just got to put my head down and get to work. Like, I got guys around me that are superstars, Cash. And I just got to put my head down and get to work, and I'm ready to work.
All right. Thank you very much, Kyle. And then
this one is directed at the left tackle, Jared Kennedy.
I noticed you lined up at receiver at one point. What do you have to say about that play and opening up the playbook in these tougher league matchups?
We put that in just so I'm a distraction. I can't go downfield, but I'm just there so Tyler Schaefer can.
And here's Cash again.
Get the seam.
If you actually look back at it, Timoth game, the first year we ran it, that was the exact pass, except I was placed down at the left guard. And I'm pretty
went out.
Yeah, and he went out. You go back and watch that game. It's the same play. And it went probably the same amount of yards. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, fellas.
Yeah,
thank you.
It was a pleasure to be able to speak with all you guys and get to learn more about the offensive line. I've been making more of an effort to talk to offensive linemen like Andreas Guillory, Deacon Schmidt, and Mason Bandhauer, but it was good to be able to learn more about it from those guys down in the trenches. And these are just funny kids, man. These are just funny kids. It feels weird that for the first time with this group of guys, they're going to be graduating some guys out. And honestly, that doesn't quite feel right. I actually, from a personal standpoint, I had a conversation with Tanner Gray where I was like, oh, yeah, are you going to be wrestling against Vince Hochhalter from Timnath at all this year? And he was like, yeah, but it sucks that I'll never play him again. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Next year at the Kansas Classic? And he's like, no, Vince is graduating. Cash is graduating. And that doesn't feel right. I started my journey with these guys, and I don't know, it's just feels good to watch these kids grow. But in terms of this season, both of these teams have 2 more games of growth left. Starting off with the losers in this particular matchup, we have the Eaton Reds. Next week, they will be playing at Valley at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Valley currently not doing very great this season, unfortunately. They are only 1-6 right now, and in league, let's just say they're not doing particularly well. And then Eaton is going to be playing Berthoud, which I think is going to be an interesting matchup. When I was talking to Wellington guys about it, they said that in the Res Christian game, they just ran it down at one particular edge rusher. And that edge rusher kind of creates a bit of a weak side that just allowed 2 different players to get 120 yards for Res Christian. And it depends. We're going to have to see how Bertha does in this one and how Eaton is looking, but I think there's a solid chance that Eaton ends this season at either 6-3 or probably, it might be 5-4. I think it's a playoff team. We're going to have to see, though. Next up, Wellington. Only 2 games left. First up, we have Resurrection Christian. The Cougs overall, over the course of this season, are 4-3 as well. honestly a pretty solid team. They've had a couple of missteps, particularly against Palisade and Eaton, but that win over Bertha does show some grit here. And then Wellington also plays Valley. Who's Valley? I think even without Cash, Wellington would probably beat the Vikings here, but I'm not. If I were the Eagles, I would not count my eggs before they hatch. So we're going to see how this goes for Wellington moving forward. Again, it feels so weird. Depending on how playoffs go, this might be one of the last times I see this group of guys, and the last time I see Cash play. And I've been watching a lot of these guys for 3 years. And for Eaton, this team played better than a 20. Yeah, this team played better than a 25-point loss. It was just not their night. So we're going to have to see how that goes moving forward in this season. But for now, that's all you get from me for the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm Gideon again. A couple of reminders for you. You can find us all on social media. If you are thirsty, drink water. Hydrate or dihydrate, make sure that if you're driving, you keep your eyes on the road. Stay tuned for the Week 8 2A recap if you want to hear more about the rest of the classification, including that Res Christian Berthoud game. You can catch me right back here, same bat time, same bat channel, next Tuesday. And once more, this is Gideon from the Playmakers Corner podcast, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm your host for this segment of today's episode, and you probably just heard my voice with the Eaton Wellington recap, but I am Gideon, and today I'll be going over the games and box scores from last week in the 2A classification of Colorado High School football, and going over the different players, outstanding performances, and matchups that we had in this wonderful classification. We're going to go from Thursday to Saturday in this and just whittle down until we are all done with these matchups. But starting off, we are going to go with our Thursday games. First up, we have the Devlin Jaguars, who would defeat the Mitchell Marauders by forfeit. Not really much to say here. I do feel bad for Mitchell, but I do think that they should drop down to 1A or 8-man or 6-man or something. I don't think this is sustainable for them, but I want them to keep a program around. Next up, we would have Sterling, who would defeat Arvada 54-0. The Tigers of Sterling. We don't have stats for Arvada right now, but for Sterling, Hunter Diamond, 162 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Memphis Dempsey, next up, it looks like 4 for 8 passing for 45 yards. Rushing-wise, Carter Yeager, 176 rushing yards and 3 scores. And then receiving, the leader was Caden Mikowski with 75 yards and a touchdown, while Hunter Hirschfeld, 2 receptions for 2 touchdowns and 64 yards. On defense, Hirschfeld also had 7 tackles and was the leader of this squad. Memphis Dempsey, 6 tackles. Aiden Kaiser with 6, as well as Yeager, who had 6 with 2 for loss. And Braden Evans had 5 tackles. In terms of picks, Mikowski and Emerson each had an interception, while Yeager had a fumble recovery, and Hirschfeld and Luke Peterson each had a pass deflection. In terms of kickoffs, Memphis Dempsey, 2 kickoffs for 120 yards and 2 touchbacks, and all around a good game here from Sterling, along with Caden Mikowski with a pick 6 in this matchup. Yeah, just very good game here by Sterling to defeat Arvada. Next up, we have Bayfield losing to Salida, 28-7 Bayfield. We don't have stats for Salida, but for the Wolverines, Cole McWhorter, 12 for 26 for 139 yards and 1 touchdown. Mr. Williams with 2 receptions for 56 yards and 1 touchdown. along with 17 tackles on defense. Tyler Harriman, 10 tackles. Logan Valencia and Kalen Ramos, each with 9. Mr. Westbrook with 6. Williams the younger with 6 tackles, along with Memphis Miller, Keegan Johnston. And Austin Wilmer had 5 tackles. Memphis had 1 sack in this game, while Williams the elder had a pick. And just all around good, decent performance here by Bayfield, but ended up being bested by the Spartans of Salida. Next up, we have Manitou Springs versus Lamar. The Thunder of Lamar coming out on top in this one. This one was actually led by Lamar, 14-7 at half, and then 14 points in the third quarter from the Thunder put this away. Jacob Dunning, the sophomore quarterback, 15 for 21 passing for 248 yards and 2 touchdowns. Alex Aguilar rushing was the only positive rusher with 65 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kaysen Pollard, 88 receiving yards and a touchdown. Diego Estrada with 64. Cale Buxton with 50. Mr. Williams, the tight end, 35 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. And then in terms of defense, Adriel Gonzalez, 17 tackles. Diego Estrada with 14. Davier Martinez with 12. Axton Morales with 11. Braxton Shelton and Mr. Leah Ibarra, each with 10. Maverick Medina with 8 here. And then pretty good game here from Lamar to defeat the Manitou Springs Mustangs. Not as much of a blowout as you would want it to be if you are Lamar in this situation. And honestly, I am a little bit concerned about the Thunder, because this is a team that you should really be beating by at least 20. And so odds are that Lamar will win out, but I am worried about this team come playoffs. Next up, we have Berthoud, who would fall to Resurrection Christian. Starting with Berthoud's stats here, Skylar Stryker, 19 for 31 for 243 yards, a touchdown and a pick. In terms of rushing, Gavin Kirk was the leader with 88 yards and 1 touchdown. Receiving-wise, the top man for the Spartans would end up being Cade Anderson, who would have 135 receiving yards in this game. In terms of tackles, both Ethan Hoffmeister and Sam Smith would have 15, while Sean Barajas and Ben Schroeder would each have 10. Cole Bialek would have 12 in this matchup, and then Elijah Mosher would have 8 tackles in this game against Res Christian. Pretty okay performance here from Berthoud, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but Ben Schroeder, 4 kickoffs for 215 yards and 3 touchbacks. Pretty good game from him, at least. This was an interesting one. One that we're going to have to re-examine moving forward when this comes to playoff ramifications. For Res Christian, though, Jackson Pazanka, 3 for 5 passing for 22 yards and a touchdown. Rushing, though, Zanka, 158 rush yards and a score. Hunter Hansen, 117 rushing yards and a touchdown. In terms of defensive stats, Bo Gindel was the leader on defense for the Cougs with 12 total tackles. Tanner Sharp with 9, and then Ethan Carter with 7 in this matchup against Berthoud. Jackson Lucas would catch an interception, while Britton Walston would recover a fumble in this matchup. And then all around, just very good game here by Res Christian. Deacon Whirling with 1 for 1 on field goals as well, with a long of 28 yards. Just a good game here by Res Christian to defeat Berthoud. That field goal may have well been the separator here, because without that, Berthoud may not have felt pressured to go for it in a couple of those instances. But all around, good game here by Res Christian to get on the board there and get back in that playoff hunt. Next up, we would have TCA facing off with Alameda. just an all-around performance here by TCA. Andrew, 2 different quarterbacks. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different players with over 20 rushing yards. We have 6 total rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown. On defense, the standout was Alex Gould with 8 tackles, 4 of which were for loss. 1 pick by Kieran Riker for 40 yards. 2 blocked punts by Zach Hale. 1 fumble recovery from Hale as well. 1 blocked punt from Josiah Mazzulli. God, this team is going to be a nightmare in the playoffs. Zach Mediavia with 90 kick return yards in 1 kickoff return. 1 kickoff return touchdown, 1 touchdown reception, 6 rushing touchdowns, and 8 for 8 on PATs for Nathaniel Thorne. Just a good game here from TCA against Alameda. TCA is going to win out. My only concern for them come playoffs is that this schedule outside of this league schedule is cupcake, and I'm not sure who in the state can stop them. They only have 1 game left, really, because I doubt Mitchell wants to play them, and we'll see how Devlin does next week. Next up, we have Woodland Park versus Florence. The Panthers of Woodland Park would defeat the Huskies 42-6. Florence would actually lead heading into the second quarter 6-0, but Woodland Park would score 21 unanswered points in the second and just carry it away from there. For Florence, the leader rushing was Noah Howard with 100 yards and 1 touchdown. In terms of tackles, Wyatt Dudley was the leader with 2.5 tackles for loss. Hunsberger, Gabe Sullivan, Joey Hess, and Bodie Taylor all had 7 tackles, while Mackay Height had a pass deflection. And yeah, this just wasn't a great game here from Florence. Certainly not what I know they can do, but ultimately it is what it is. For Woodland Park, Marcus Schoenberger had an off day, 1 for 5 passing for 27 yards and 1 touchdown. Schoenberger made up for it on the ground, though, with 94 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Trey Reed, 15 carries for 153 yards and 1 touchdown. Ben Summerall and Aiden Hood also each had a score rushing. Parker Shreve, 1 catch for 27 yards and a touchdown in this matchup. And then Mr. Gaucus, Ben Summerall, 9 and 8 tackles respectively. Trey Reed and Parker Shreve each had 7. While Shreve had 2 sacks, Gaucus had 1, along with Mateo Pizarro, Mr. Leonhardt, and Aiden Hood. Gaucus would also have a blocked punt in this game, so very good game there from him. Miles Wiley, 6 for 6 on PATs. Wiley is a very good kicker, one that I trust and one that I know is a good person, so I can't wait to see him and how the rest of this Panthers squad does in the playoffs. Next up, we have the Academy facing off with Weld Central. The Academy would end up beating Weld Central here 43-24. Good game for the Academy. Good signs for the future in my mind. However, Jace Farmer, the senior quarterback, will be graduating, but in this matchup in particular, Farmer with 101 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. He would also have 28 rushing yards and a score, but the leading rusher would be Jacob Arsberger with 186 rush yards and 3 touchdowns. Andre Mendoza would have 79 receiving yards and a touchdown through the air. And on defense, Mendoza would also have 10 tackles, while Arsberger would have 9. And on defense, further, Blake Andreo would have a sack, and Amador Lopez would have a pick, the freshman. Aiden Austin would have 1 punt for 54 yards, which is kind of wild here. And then all around, good game here, especially from Arsberger to get a win over the Weld Central Rebels. After that, we have Wellington defeating Eaton 35-10. If you want to hear more about this matchup, just go back and listen to me recapping that. I was able to have a good game with Phoenix, but you're going to have to tune into that to hear how this game went. After that, though, Gunnison would defeat Pagosa Springs 41-27. I don't even know what to think about this one. We don't have stats for this game yet, but we will see in the future what exactly happened in this matchup between the Cowboys and the Pirates. After that, we're going to have La Junta defeating the Banning Lewis Academy Stallions 36-7. The Tigers do not have stats entered yet, but for Banning Lewis, we see that at the very least on defense, Jordan Jones and Sam Early were performing well. 8 tackles from both of them. Cam Leggett with 7 tackles, Chase Reel with 7 as well, and then Mason Ontisdale with 6 in this matchup. In terms of fumbles, Liam Dorsch and Aiden Dorsch each forced 1, and then Colton Coster 1 for 1 on PATs. By the way, Liam Dorsch, the senior, 1 catch for 13 yards and a touchdown in this matchup against La Junta, but the Tigers just too much for the Stallions to handle. Next up, even without Brevin Doss, University would handle Valley handily 34-0 for the Bulldogs of University. Max Davis was the quarterback, 61 passing yards, 4 for 6 on that, for 1 touchdown. In terms of rushing, the leader here is going to be Michael Kelly, 11 carries for 95 yards and 3 touchdowns. Freddie Kano, 9 carries for 87 yards and a score. 2 catches for Will Corby for 44 yards and a touchdown. And then on defense for the Bulldogs, the leaders for the Bulldogs on tackles at least were Mandarko Abrego and Titan Bentley, each with 4 tackles. Abrego and Caleb Johnson would each have a sack, and then Xavier Flores and Bryce Constance would each recover a fumble here. So, solid game here from University without Brevin Doss, but Valley is the team that everyone picked last in this league, so it's going to be interesting to see how the University Bulldogs hold up moving forward. Next up, we have Denver West defeating Lincoln 70-0. No stats for Lincoln, unfortunately. Denver West, Marcelo Ortiz, 4 for 4 passing for 57 yards and 3 touchdowns. Gianni Sanchez, 34 rush yards and 1 touchdown. The freshman, by the way, on that. Robert Whitkey, 25 receiving yards and a touchdown. Jesus Acevedo with 21 and a score, and then Ernest Fields with 1 catch for a touchdown and 21 yards. Jere Jones was the leader with 6 tackles, while Mr. Perea Martinez had 5. Mr. Whitkey also had 3 tackles. Aries Yuang with 2 sacks in this matchup. Whitkey had 2 interceptions as well, while Freddie Lucero forced 2 fumbles, recovered 1 for 40 yards, and then got a pick for 40 yards as well. Whitkey would return a punt for 40 yards, and Nehemiah McIntosh would have 48 kickoff return yards. Yuang would also force a safety in this game, while there were 7 total conversions. And Whitkey would score 3 different ways here. 1 reception, 1 pick six, and 1 punt return. It's Lincoln. We all expected it, but good game here by Denver West. For Delta, though, the Panthers would come out on top of the Aspen Skiers 28-7. Aspen would have 4 different players throw a pass here. Brett Eggleston, 5 for 6 for 58 yards and a touchdown. And then rushing, Dylan Micah, 115 rushing yards. And through the air, Micah would also have the only touchdown here with 16 yards receiving and 1 score. On defense, Landon Thurber had 9 tackles, while Andrew Palmaz had 6. And Alex Schlesinger Hall was able to block a punt in this game. Not the best game from Aspen, but they did what they could against the reigning champs. Ty Reed, speaking of the reigning champs, would go 10 for 18 passing for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rushing, Reed would also have 41 rush yards and 2 scores, while Nay So would have 107 rush yards. Jordan Frazier would have 88 receiving yards and a touchdown. And then on defense, Alex McKenna would have 16 tackles, while Dylan Gordon had 10. Joe Kurtz would have 9. Then Jordan Frazier and Rip Lockhart would each have 7. Landon Horn would have a pick in this game, and all around, pretty good game here from Delta to keep their winning ways against Aspen. After that, we're going to have Basalt defeating Moffat County 48-7. No stats for Moffat County yet, but for the Basalt Longhorns, Mr. Schneider, 9 for 18 passing for 184 yards and 3 touchdowns. Will Tarallo had 86 rush yards and a score. Taylor Hayes, 56 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. William Daniel with 34 rushing yards. And then receiving, Hayes was the leader there too, with 100 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. Cody Barton and Will Daniel each had 7 tackles, while Dylan Ferreira and Connor Ants each had 6 in this game. In terms of picks, Will Tarallo and Taylor Hayes each had 2, although Tarallo's was for 82 yards in total, while Hayes only had 4 interception return yards. Samuel Wolf, 7 kickoffs for 372 yards, and then all around, that is just about it here for the Basalt Longhorns, but very good game here from Basalt to win over Moffat County. Odds are that Basalt is going to win out, so we're going to need to see how that looks moving forward. After that, we have Montezuma Cortez defeating Alamosa 28-21. This one's going to be wild looking at it. Dyson Woodward, 8 for 15 passing for 125 yards. Zane Zook, 26 carries for 173 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Dyson Woodward with 126 rushing yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. Mr. Gonzalez Jr. with 85 receiving yards. And that's really it here for Alamosa. But the Mean Moose would get downed here by the Montezuma Cortez Panthers. Next, we have Strasburg coming out on top of Englewood here. No stats for Strasburg yet, but the Berg would win 35-0. Looking at it for Englewood, nobody really made too much noise on offense. Dylan Knoll, 8 for 18 passing for 79 yards, but 2 interceptions. But on defense, the leader was definitely a Logan Mail with 15 tackles and 4 tackles for loss. Dion Robinson with 8 tackles as well in this game, while Logan Mail also had 3 sacks overall over the course of this contest. Carson Hoganson and Nathan Owens each caught a pick over the course of this one, while Kai Robb and Logan Mail would each force a fumble. And I know this wasn't a win for them, but this was a really good game here from Logan Mail, coming out on top as one of the better players in the 2A classification. So that is going to be a very interesting player to watch moving forward, not just this season, but next year, as he is only a junior. And finally, we are on our Saturday games. Starting off, we're going to go with Kent Denver, who would defeat Bennett 48-22. The Sun Devils coming out on top here, but no stats for Kent Denver as of yet. But for Bennett, Cougar Kronk with the lead rushing with 123 yards and 1 touchdown. Brody Hawes with 108 rush yards and a score. When we're looking at defense, Hawes would also be the leader there with 14 tackles. 12 of those being solo. Cougar Kronk with 7 total tackles. And then Kronk would also catch an interception in this game. 3 touchdowns here by Bennett. Forrest Smith also caught one with 1 reception on 21 yards. And then Austin Steers and Kronk would each rush for a conversion. Honestly, this is kind of a worrying game for Kent Denver, but good performance here from Bennett. Bennett hasn't had the best season, but this is this is the 3rd most points that they've scored all year. So if you're Bennett, you are feeling good here. Next week we do have, or in 2 weeks, we have bye week and then the Battle of the Bridge. So it is going to be interesting to see how Bennett does against those crosstown rivals. Next up we have Cole Ridge defeating Middle Park 28-6. No stats from Middle Park, but for Cole Ridge, Grayson Eisenhart, 16 tackles, 1.5 for loss. Carter Kuhn with 6 tackles, and then Eisenhart would also have the sole sack here, along with a pick, along with Evan Duca and Diego Gomez with interceptions as well. No other stats here, only defensive for the Titans. And finally, we have Fort Lupton falling to Brush, 21-14, the Beat Diggers winning over the Blue Devils. For Fort Lupton, Josiah Gonzalez, 8 for 20 passing for 182 yards and 2 touchdowns to 2 picks. Gonzalez would also have 69 rush yards over the course of this game. The leader in receiving for the Blue Devils was Joshua Munoz with 72 receiving yards and 1 score. And then Jesse Soretto scored the other touchdown through the air. In terms of defense and tackles, Dylan Alvarado with 11, 1 for loss. Julian Araguin with 8. Josiah Gonzalez and Giovanni Carlton and Jesse Soretto each had 7. And no other real major defensive stats, though. Although Gonzalez did have 66 kickoff return yards in this matchup. Ultimately, I am worried about Fort Lupton without Royce Guerrero. I feel like with him, they would have won a few more games this year, but ultimately it's not my place to say. Fort Lupton is now 2-5 with 2 games left against Sterling and Arvada. I think they'll beat Arvada, but Sterling is going to be a tall order. But all around, that is it for our games in the 2A classification this past week. Quite a few contests, just about every team played, but it will be interesting to see who comes out on top this postseason. In terms of our Playmaker of the Week, I'm not going to tell you who got it. I'm just going to tell you who the nominees are. We have Hunter Hirschfeld from Sterling, Jacob Arsberger from the Academy, Graydon Buchanan from Gunnison, Taylor Hayes from Basalt, Grayson Eisenhart from Cole Ridge, Cash Alchfager from Wellington, and Logan Mail from Englewood. Stay tuned to hear who ended up being our Playmaker of the Week in the 2A classification, along with the final game recaps. We have 2 from Simon, 1 in 4A and 1 in 3A, which you will hear very shortly. But if you are listening to this, make sure that you are staying hydrated. If you're listening to this while you're driving, you keep your eyes on the road. And I'll make sure to have the best day I can if you promise to make sure you have the best day you can. I'll catch y'all on the flip side, and stay frosty out there. Peace.
Hello again, friends, and welcome back once more for my final segment in today's show, our playoff picture recap. Basically, what I'm going to be doing for this is going through the 2A classification and what the CHASA selection and seeding index says are the top 20 or so teams. I'll include a couple of others if I think there is a slight chance they will make it into the playoffs. And from there, I will basically just assess, okay, here's what this team needs to do to secure their spot or make it into the playoffs at all for those teams in the 10 to 20 range. And so we are going to start here with our numbers 1, 3, 4, and 5 teams according to the CHASA selection index. First up, we have the team that is currently seeded number 1 according to the selection index, that being the Basalt Longhorns, undefeated as of now, 7-0, and ultimately it looks like they will win out. Their only remaining opponents are Middle Park and Aspen. Now, Aspen, they do have some good players on that team, guys like Henry Hurd, Alex Lessinger Hall, but neither of these teams have been the most successful this year. Middle Park, over the course of the season, is only 1-6, and Aspen they haven't had the best year either. 4-3, they have a chance to make the playoffs, but honestly, Basalt just needs to win against Middle Park, and they are guaranteed a playoff spot. Next up, we have the Classical Academy, who's almost as uncomplicated. TCA is in one of the worst of the leagues in the state. One of the 2 remaining games is against Mitchell, who is forfeit to Devlin, so odds are Mitchell will not be playing the rest of their season. So TCA really only has 1 game left against Devlin, and even though Devlin has Kafuifi Adanu, the Jaguars are 3-4, and one of those wins was, again, that forfeit against Mitchell. So Devlin is probably going to be a win here for TCA. TCA just needs to win those 2 games to secure a spot in the top 5. Next up, we have, we're going to go with our number 2 team here, which is the Strasburg squad down out east. Currently 6-1. Only loss is to Elizabeth, but they do have a tough game coming up here against Kent and Denver. I think that Strasburg, regardless, will be a playoff team, but the problem is that they have a tough matchup here with Kent and Denver. They also have a game against Bennett for the Battle of the Bridge, but in my mind, that game against Bennett is an almost definite win. The Tigers, I believe they only have 1 win this season, Strasburg's going to win that game. Bennett's only win is against Kennedy, and Kennedy is awful. So I think that the game next Saturday against Kent and Denver will determine it, but regardless, Strasburg is going to be a top 10 team. Next up, we have Lamar, the Thunder, currently 6-1. Only loss was to Woodland Park 2 weeks ago. The only games they have left are against Banning Lewis and Florence. I think that regardless, this team will end up winning out, that is, and should maintain a top 5 seed. Woodland Park is about the same. Remaining games are against Manitou Springs and La Junta, both teams that are in the bottom half of this league. So ultimately, I do think that both Woodland Park and Lamar are going to win out and maintain top 5 positions. Moving on, we have to talk about our number 6 seeded team, the Wellington Eagles. Wellington is currently sitting at 5-2 with losses to Mountain View and Berthoud, with wins over Colonial from Orlando, Florida, Fort Lupton, Timnath University, and Eaton. That University win is very good for their RPI, even if Brevin Doss wasn't playing. Good win over Eaton, who last week was a top 10 team in the selection index. Next week, Wellington is going to have to play against Resurrection Christian. The Cougars are a good team. They just beat Berthoud, who defeated Wellington, but the problem is that Wellington is gaining back a bunch of starters next week. Guys like Canyon Breed, Ezra Bat-Jargle, Tegan Greiman. They're going to be getting some guys back, and being able to beat Eaton without those players, and Eaton is a squad that blanked Res Christian 28-0. Basically, I have no clue what's going to happen, but Wellington is going to have a chance here to knock Res Christian out of the playoff race for good. The Cougars, they needed to pick up a couple of wins, and that win against Berthoud is going to look good on their resume, but Res Christian needed to do better against Eaton, and they just didn't. But in terms of Wellington, they also have a game against Valley coming up. Valley is 1-6 right now. I do not see them as a threat in the least bit. They will be gaining some players back for that game in particular. Honestly, I do not see Valley being a threat in the least bit. Wellington has a chance to win out. At the very least, they're going to end this season at 6-3, probably 7-2. So, again, we're going to have to see how it goes, but I think the Eagles will remain top 10. Even if they do lose to Res Christian, it'll be close. At number 7, we have the Elizabeth Cardinals. The Cards, so far this season, have 5 wins, 2 losses. Wins over Glenwood Springs, Sierra, Weld Central, Strasburg, and Bennett.
with losses to the Classical Academy and Pagosa Springs. Now, Elizabeth's remaining games are against Englewood and Kent Denver. Englewood, they're ranked at 23, and Kent Denver is ranked at 16 right now. So in my mind, if Elizabeth wins out, they have a chance to shut both of these teams out of the playoffs for good. Englewood, they're sneaky. They're a sneaky good team. They've got some good athletes, but I do think that Elizabeth will probably win that one. I trust Elizabeth's line more, even though Joe McMains is a very good athlete. I do trust guys like Caden Long and Drake Brinkworth are players that I really trust when it comes to these close games, and I trust them more than Englewood. On the flip side of things, Kent Denver. Kent Denver's been a tough team this year. They have two really, really bad losses that we're looking at, and I am not sure that I think that this Kent Denver this Kent Denver team can beat Elizabeth. I think it's certainly possible. The Sun Devils do have a D1 offered player in Trip Skews, and those losses to Forge Christian and Aspen, though, they definitely they don't give me any. They don't help at all. And then even some of their wins, like they only beat not Forge Christian, they beat Denver Christian by the same amount as the 8-man team who beat Denver Christian did. And letting Bennett drop 22, which is the most they've had outside of that win this season, I don't know. I feel weird about this Kent Denver squad. I do think that Elizabeth might win that game. Either way, I think Elizabeth is going to be a playoff team. It's not like losing to the 16 seed is the worst thing in the world. I do think that a loss to Kent Denver here would drop Elizabeth into a double-digit seed and an away team in this playoff. But I do think that regardless, Elizabeth does have a good chance at potentially even remaining a home team if they win out. But I think that there's a good chance that more of a chance of 2-2, but there's a good shot they go 1-1 in the remaining weeks. Next up, though, we have the Berthoud Spartans. Berthoud 5-2 as well right now, losses to Thompson Valley and Res Christian last week with wins over Moffat County, Weld Central, Coronado, Wellington, and Valley. The only problem with this team is that their only really good win is over Wellington, and that one was by 8 the week after they lost their starting quarterback. I'm worried about Berthoud right now. I do think that they will be a playoff team, but given how bad they just lost to Res Christian, who, I mean, if we're going by power scaling here, Wellington just blew out Eaton. Eaton blew out Res Christian, and then Berthoud just lost to Res Christian by 5. The remaining games on the schedule here for Berthoud are University and Eaton. I think that the University game is a win. Brevin Doss, he's out for the year. He's torn his ACL. So you don't have to worry about him. And I mean, University is solid, but in my mind, they're a bit of a lame duck now. And the other teams in this league can use those wins to bolster their RPI because of how University did when Doss was healthy. But I do think that Eaton game is going to determine where those two teams end up, because Eaton is actually the next team up at the 9 seed. And in my mind, let's say that Berthoud wins by 1 touchdown. Okay, they stay between the 8 and 11 spots. But if either of these teams win by more than 2 scores, then ultimately I do not think that... I think that both of them can make it. I do think that one of them ends up between 14 and 16 if it's more than 2 touchdowns. Because looking at Sterling, Delta, Denver West, Montezuma, Cortez, those are all good teams that have a chance to secure playoff spots. Delta has a shot at a league championship. Sterling has a shot at a league championship. Montezuma Cortez is first in the Intermountain League right now. So I do think, and Denver West is probably going to win out. So I do think that whoever wins that game is going to stay a single-digit seed, and whoever loses that game, if it's by more than one touchdown, it's probably going to end up somewhere between the 11 and 14 seeds right now. And then if one of the teams gets blown out, then you really need to be concerned. Eaton, they do have a security blanket win against Valley. Valley's just the only team in that league that nobody is scared of. The Vikings are, to put it frankly, absolutely horrible. So they do not worry me in the least bit. And that really covers both Berthoud and Sterling, or Berthoud and Eaton in one go. Next up, though, we have the Sterling Tigers. Now, Sterling, they don't really have any more quality opponents left. And the only problem is they don't really have very many quality wins either. They're 6-1. I do think that they're better than their record. Their only loss is to Lamar, and that one was a one-score loss, 30-22, back in week 2. I do think that this team has gotten better, and they're going to win their league championship. Their remaining matchups are against 2-5 Fort Lupton and 4-3 Weld Central. But Weld Central, I don't know. I just don't feel good about them at all, really. Their only remaining games are Brush and Sterling as well. I think that the playoff spot in this league comes down to how Weld Central does. But Weld Central, a 26-0 loss against Berthoud and a 23-6 loss to Elizabeth. I really just don't feel good about this one for the Rebels. And this covers Weld Central as well because they're at that 25 seed, but there's a chance that they win this league. But I really do think that Weld Central is probably going to be the only remaining challenge for Sterling, and it should be easy. Sterling is sitting at that 10 seed spot right now. I do think that with whoever loses that Berthoud Eaton game, Sterling could rise up into that 9 spot. But either way, I do think they will be an away team in the playoffs. But honestly, there's nothing to be ashamed of there. Good season, only one loss. I think you're a pretty solid squad. Next up, though, we have Delta, who are currently 5-2. Lost to Palisade, lost to Basalt, wins over Gunnison, Rifle, Alamosa, and Middle Park and Aspen. The only remaining games are against Moffat County, who is 2-5 so far, and Moffat County are also 0-3 against common opponents. Moffat County is a loss to all of Coleridge, Aspen, and Basalt, and Delta's going to win the game against the Moffat County Bulldogs, and then Delta also has to face off with Coleridge, which should be a little bit more interesting. I'll just start talking about Coleridge here as well. The Titans are also 5-2. Only the losses are to Steamboat Springs and then also to Basalt as well. Basalt is winning this league. That's pretty obvious to say, but when it comes down to it, now Coleridge, they're at the 17 seed. And their remaining games are Aspen and Delta. I think if they can beat Aspen, they have a good shot at grabbing that 16 spot. And if they come within one score of Delta, they have a good shot of making it. A lot of chips have to fall right. A lot of the teams in front of them have to lose. I think we'll talk about Pagosa Springs more later, but I think that's probably their best, Coleridge's best bet, is for Pagosa to lose one of their remaining games. And then Coleridge can rise into that 15 or 16 spot. But in my mind, I do think that Delta will probably win that game. It just comes down to how close Coleridge can get it. Because Delta does still have Ty Reed, and I definitely don't trust them as much as I did last year. But you got guys like a Jordan Frazier, like Ty Reed on defense, you have guys who started in a state championship game. So, long story short on this, I guess, I do think that Delta will probably win out. I think they'll stay about at that 10 to 12 spot. It just depends how close that game against Coleridge is. Coleridge has more to benefit here than Delta does for winning out. Because either way, I think that with Coleridge being so close to Delta in the rankings, both could make it in that like 13-14 spot if they win. Next up, though, we have Denver West. Now, the Cowboys are 6-1. Their only loss came from the Classical Academy in that league matchup. TCA ended up winning that one 49-0, which isn't great. Though, I mean, win over Prospect Ridge, win over Englewood, over Manual, Jefferson, Mitchell, and Lincoln. Lost to TCA. The only games left are against Alameda and Devlin. Alameda is 3-4 right now, so better than they were last year. But those wins are over Jefferson, the Pinnacle, and Mitchell. So not wins that you can feel confident about, really. And then Devlin right now sitting at 3-4 as well. Again, one of those wins over Mitchell in a forfeit. I think that Denver West will probably win these games. I think Robert Whitkey has a solid MVP case. Probably won't win MVP. We'll have to see how that looks, but I mean, given that Devlin beat Alameda, I do think that will be the tougher game for Denver West. But I think that the Cowboys are better coached and that they have better all-around talent, along with, I mean, it's not a good schedule, but it's a tougher schedule than the remaining two teams, at least in terms of like who they beat. Yeah, ultimately, I do think that the game against Devlin is giving me some pause. If Denver West loses to Devlin, they're going to drop out. Devlin right now is all the way down at 29. So a loss to them is really just nail in the coffin at that point. But I do think Denver West has a good chance that if they win out, they remain at that 12 spot. I mean, obviously not the most fun thing in the world, because then you would have to play Woodland Park. But I think the Cowboys have a good shot. Next up, it is time to talk about the 13 and 15 seeded teams currently. We have Montezuma Cortez and Pagosa Springs. These teams are both members of the Intermountain League and actually will both be playing each other along with Alamosa, who is the final member, who is the 20th seed and the last team I'm going to be talking about in this playoff preview. Now, the thing with all three of these teams, Alamosa, Montezuma Cortez, and Pagosa, is that Pagosa is 4-3, Alamosa is 4-3, and Bayfield is currently sitting at Montezuma Cortez is 6-1. Their only loss is to Strasburg, and a good amount of their games have been out of state. 3 of their 7 at this point. My problem is I really do not know how this looks. I do think that Alamosa, unless they beat Pagosa, well, I think that Alamosa is out. I think only one of the teams in this league will make the playoffs. And with Montezuma Cortez beating the Mean Moose, I think that the Panthers have a good chance at being that team. Montezuma Cortez, I mean, Alamosa, just going to get them out of the way. Losses here to Pueblo Central, Delta, and Montezuma Cortez. The remaining games are Salida and Pagosa Springs. I think that Alamosa wins against Salida, but against Pagosa, I think that one will be a tough order. A 50-50 game. Pagosa is currently sitting at the 15 seed. If Alamosa wins that, Pagosa is out. But I think that would drop both of them into the first 4 out range. if Pagosa beats Alamosa, I do think there's a solid chance that they stay in, but that also relies on Pagosa playing Montezuma Cortez close. Now, looking at this again, 6-1 versus 4-3, Pagosa has had some dumb losses this season. They do have the rushing leader in Colton Lucero, but both teams have played Gunnison and Salida. Montezuma Cortez beat Gunnison by 50, while Pagosa lost by almost 20. And Montezuma Cortez had a similar score against Salida as Pagosa. In my mind, though, I do think, and Pagosa did actually lose to Bayfield. Montezuma Cortez has yet to play the Wolverines. Those will be next week. But I'll be honest, I think that Montezuma Cortez wins out. I think that they shut the door on Bayfield's playoff spot, and I think that just this last week they shut the door on Alamosa. If Pagosa keeps it close within 1 or 2 scores, I think they stay in that like 15-16 range. There is definitely potential to drop if Coal Ridge wins big or keeps it close against Delta. But honestly, all Pagosa has to do is keep it within a score of Montezuma Cortez. I think Montezuma Cortez is going to win this league regardless, so I think they'll be fine. But yeah, Pagosa is definitely a team that I'm worried about because both Montezuma Cortez and Alamosa have a chance at making the playoffs. So there's a good chance that the Pirates fall out. We need to see how it goes, but there is certainly a chance. One of our last teams here is going to be the current number 14 team, the Academy Wildcats. The Academy are currently sitting at 4-3, wins over Alameda, Skyview, Fort Lupton, and Weld Central, with losses to Forge Christian, Strasburg, and Sterling. Now, Alameda, or the Academy, is also in this league with Sterling. I hesitate to say that they'll be in the playoffs. I think that there is a good chance that they will be in the playoffs, considering that their remaining opponents are Arvada and Brush. Both teams are 1-6 and 2-5. So I definitely believe that there's a good chance. I can see that the Academy will probably win over Arvada. Arvada is one of the worst teams in the state this year. They only had 2 wins, had to forfeit one of them to Mitchell, and their only other win is over Lincoln by 60. This is an easy win for the Academy. Might even bring their RPI down, but after that is going to be Brush. Brush might be a bit of a challenge, but in my mind, the Academy has beat some of these teams by more. Now, the Fort Lupton win, I'm a little bit concerned by, but beating Weld Central as bad as they did, and losing to Sterling relatively close, I do think there's a chance that Brush plays spoiler here, because Brush is all the way down at 31. So a loss there would knock out the Academy and push somebody else up. But if the Academy is able to win by more than 1 score, by more than 2 scores over Brush, I think they stay in. And that's kind of, honestly, that's kind of it for our playoff preview. A lot of these teams are playing each other to close out. I do think that my team's at risk of falling out here. My 4 teams that I'm most worried about are Montezuma Cortez, the Academy, Pagosa, and Kent Denver. I know that those are just the last 4 teams listed, but those are the teams who who have the toughest remaining schedules and who potentially could fall out of the playoff race. One of Montezuma, Cortez, Pagosa, or Alamosa is going to make the playoffs. There's no if about it. Those are all teams from the Intermountain League, and one of those teams, the league champion, automatically qualifies for the playoffs. So currently Montezuma Cortez is first in that league, but they have played all of the weaker teams so far. The Academy got a tough game against Brush coming up that I think they could get upset in, and that would create room for a team like a Coleridge or a University, Res Christian, or Alamosa to slide up. I don't think very many teams outside of Coleridge, University, Res Christian, and Alamosa have a chance at sliding up. I think Aspen has a good shot. Englewood has a decent shot. But all around, those are the only teams left that might, off of strength of schedule or RPI, make it. But I honestly don't think it's close enough that I would consider them for these playoffs right now. So ultimately, that is my 2A playoff preview. Long and short, there's a lot going on in this classification, but one, I think, will remain Basalt. Strasburg will remain between 2 and 6. TCA, Lamar, and Woodland Park will remain top 5. Wellington will remain top 10. Elizabeth will remain top 12. Berthoud and Eaton should remain between the 8 and 13 spots. Sterling should remain top 10. Delta and Denver West should remain in this top 13. Montezuma Cortez, the Academy, Pagosa, and Kent Denver all have a chance to fall out. And Coleridge, University, Res Christian, and Alamosa all have a realistic shot at rising. So that is all for me today. I hope that all of you are having a great day, and I will catch you all later. Peace.
All right, Coach V here, and I got your recap of the Saturday game from October 19th between Discovery Canyon and Harrison. Going into this game, both teams looking to make the playoffs as they were both over or still over 500 and have winning records here. Discovery Canyon obviously ranked higher. They can't afford a loss though. Harrison on the outside looking in. They need a key win to get in to the playoffs in a couple weeks here. So let's go ahead and hop into this game. Harrison will start with the ball here. And here's how it'll go down. They'll start with a first down on the 23. It's handoff up the middle. It goes for maybe 1 yard. Then on second down, their quarterback, that's Helio Hamenyimana, I want to say, the junior quarterback. Excuse me if I'm just butchering that, by the way. Tries to throw the out route here to Maurice Martin, but it is just out of reach here. Then it's a keeper by number 2, and he is stopped short. So they go 3 and out and they punt. Now Discovery Canyon takes over on the 39. They start with a handoff left to Devin Baker. He goes for 2. They then toss it left to Sam Kobayashi, but he is stringed out, not able to get a big gain here. So now it's 3rd and 8 here. On third down here, Hayden Jones, the senior quarterback for Discovery Canyon, goes ahead and he finds Terrence Dantzler quickly down the left sideline, but he is stopped short, so it's 4th and 1. They decide to go for it. It's a handoff to Baker. He gets the quick first down. Then after that first down conversion here, Jones, he drops back and he throws a slant to Riley Strain, who puts a move on the DB, and then he is loose to the house to go ahead and put Discovery Canyon up 6-0, soon 7-0 after the PAT. Now Harrison, looking to respond, fields the kickoff here, but it is fumbled, and so Discovery Canyon takes over with a first down past midfield on the 25 here, but then they hand it off and it's fumbled, so Harrison ends up taking over anyways with a first down on the 21, 8:38 left. Now their quarterback takes a shot on the post to Maurice Martin here, but unfortunately it is dropped here. He might have been able to score on this one, so that's tough. Then on second down here, they just go ahead and hand it off to Philip Pogue. He gets a nice 6-yard gain. Then they hand it off to Pogue again, but he gets swarmed and stuffed, and so they are forced to punt, going a quick 3 and out. Now Discovery Canyon, they take over here, and here's what happens. On first down, it's all drop. On second down, it's a handoff, but it's stuffed in the backfield by a bunch of Harrison Panthers, so now it's 3rd and 16. They run the speed option right, and it ends up getting pitched to Dantzler here for a key first down, a long first down, by the way. So there you go there. Then handed off to Baker. He stopped for a loss. Then there's a sweep left, which gets pretty good gain, but there's a penalty, an unsportsmanlike thrown on Discovery Canyon. So now it's 2nd and 22. Now, on second down, Hayden Jones is able to get a lot of that, making it 3rd and 11 after he scrambles. They then hand it off up the middle to Baker. He gets a nice couple yards, but he is short. It's 4th and 5. They decide to go for it. And on 4th down, they pitch it left to Kobayashi, Sam Kobayashi, who fights forward and gets the first down, but there's a holding penalty. So now that becomes a 4th and 15 again instead of a first, and so they are forced to punt. But it doesn't matter, as Harrison is not able to take advantage of this. They try to run the ball here, but it is just not working. And so they go a pretty quick 3 and out, and Discovery Canyon takes over with 1:20 on the 49. On first down for Discovery Canyon, they go ahead and run a sweep left to Braden Delaney. He gives them a first down. Then they go ahead and run the option here. Jones keeps it, but he's stopped for a loss. So now it's 2nd and 13, and that's where we pick up here in the second quarter. Discovery Canyon with a 2nd and 13 on the 31. They go ahead and run a play action here, and Jones gathers himself, takes a shot deep down the right sideline to number 3 here. That would be AJ Peters, and he brings it in for a touchdown. Maybe a little bit of controversy from where I was at. It looked like that there was a little push, or he ran into the defender, Peters, that is. So I know some Harrison fans were not very happy, and coaches were not very happy with that one, but a catch is a catch, and so they go up 13-0. The PAT is missed, though, interesting enough. It looks like it is blocked here, so they only go up 13-0. Now, Harrison, they take over here, but the struggles continue. They're just honestly not really winning at the line, and they're trying to run the ball, and then when they throw it, it's just off the mark, as there's just a lot of pressure in the face of the quarterback. So they go 3 and out once more. Now Discovery Canyon, they take over with the first on the 39 with 10:24 left. It starts out with a handoff right to Baker. He goes for 5. Then it's a play action here. Jones throwing right, but it is overthrown. He had an open receiver too, which is tough. On 3rd down, they go ahead and run a sweep left to Terrence Dantzler, and he runs over a player for a first down. Now Harrison, they called their second timeout, as Discovery Canyon is now on the 20 with 9:34 left here. And they're past midfield, by the way. But after the timeout, here's what happens. Discovery Canyon hands it off to Devin Baker, who weaves in and out and almost scores here, but is stopped just short here. So they go hurry up, and it's a quarterback sneak here to Jones, who punches it in to make it 20-0. Now Harrison, they take over with 9:22 left. Not quite out of this game, but they got to respond pretty quickly, or it's just not going to be good. And so here's what happens. On first down, the quarterback goes right, and he gets smacked here by a couple defenders. But on second down here, they go ahead and hand it off to one of their running backs. That would go ahead and be Josiah Evans, who breaks loose here and is off to the races. It's looking like he's about to score, but he eventually gets brought down here. Still, though, it is a 1st and 10 on the 19 past the midfield. And so here's what happens. There's a scramble left and thrown, and it is broken up. But then on second down, they just hand it off to Philip Polk, and he finishes what Josiah Evans started, and he punches in a touchdown. Kind of walks in a touchdown, really, from 19 yards out to make it 20-7 after the PAT. Now, Discovery Canyon, they take over with a 20 left here, but they're just not quite able to capitalize here. A tough penalty, a holding penalty thrown on them, forces them to punt it, and so Harrison takes over on the 19 with 2:57 left, but then they're not able to capitalize as they're trying to run the ball, but they're just not quite able to get what they got on the pass drive, so they go 3 and out. And so Discovery Canyon, they take over with the first on the 49, about 2 minutes left, so they got a 2-minute drill, and here is what happens. It starts with a toss right to Kobayashi, that goes for 1. Then a quick screen to number 4, Jack Lyons, I believe, and that goes for about 5. They then hand it off to Baker, who runs up the middle, spins, and he gets a first down. DCC calls a timeout at 35 seconds left. Out of the timeout, here's what happens. Jones, he scrambles for a first here, going... Well, he does get the first down, and I believe he gets out of bounds, so that's big time there. He then tosses it left to Kobayashi. That goes for a loss. They then try to throw deep up the seam, but it's broken up. Almost picked off, actually, as it was a shot into the end zone. And then Harrison calls a timeout with 9 seconds left. It's 3rd and 12. And so here's what happens on 3rd down. Jones throws the quick screen out to Riley Strain. He goes ahead and gets a first down. They also throw a penalty against Harrison for roughing the passer. So that's added on to the end of that game. So now it's 1st and 5. Discovery Canyon is able to take a timeout before the clock runs out. So they only have 1 second left, but it's 1st and 5, so very favorable here. And here's what happens. Jones, he gets the snap, buys time here, rolling left, and he finds Terrence Dantzler, who makes a leaping catch, by the way, a little bit high, but he brings it in and falls into the end zone to make it 26-6. Now, the PAT is blocked at half, so definitely frustrating for DCC missing out on those points there, but they're still up by 20, and honestly, by this point, it'd be over. Discovery Canyon to start the 3rd would go ahead, and they would score on their opening drive. Devin Baker would explode down the left side here to make it 32-6. Then they go for 2, and Jones would make it 34-6 here, as this game would just not be close. Discovery Canyon would end up winning 49-6 over Harrison. Now, like I said, not a super close game, but definitely an important one for Discovery Canyon. Now they're 5-2. That is their 4th win in a row, and they get to play Lewis Palmer next week. That'll be definitely a tougher game. And then they play Palmer, which they should win, and then they play Pueblo South, which is a tougher game. So you kind of just take the wins that you can here, especially against a team that's trying to make the playoffs. That's still big time. So you got to love that if you're DCC. Their defense played great. They were stopping the run, and it's not like Harrison doesn't have some size. They do, and they got some good backs over there. But Discovery Canyon just came out and played with an edge, and so you gotta love that. Offensively, they looked balanced. I think it's really interesting. I'm gonna throw this out there because I don't know when. I mean, honestly, I don't know when I will be able to throw this out there again. But Hayden Jones this game, interesting enough, was allowed to pass it a little bit more here. So I don't have the stats right now from this Harrison game, but I know he has definitely passed more than he has the last 3 or 4 games, for sure at least, I feel. In that first game against Central, I felt like they let him pass it a lot. He had 19 attempts, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, also had 2 rushing touchdowns in that one. And then in the last couple weeks, they've kind of just relied on him running the ball there. Against Pueblo East, right after that Central game, he had 3 rushing touchdowns and 119 yards. Centennial, I mean, it's Centennial, so they were going to run the ball there. But against Rampart, he had more rushing yards than passing yards, which I thought was interesting there. And then against Harrison, he was able to pass a lot. So weird that they pass the ball more when I'm there, it feels like. But, I am not going to necessarily complain about that. I thought he had a very clean game. He did a good job taking over and commanding this offense, so you got to feel good about that there. Also, their leading rusher, too, by the way, so no surprises there. Devin Baker, he had some nice runs there. The offensive line played good. Receivers were very productive in this one as well. Strain, Kobayashi, Dantzler, all doing what they got to do over there. And I just thought they looked very balanced and good this game, so not too much more to say. For Harrison, it was a little rough. I think defensively they found their footing in the second quarter, but by then it was pretty much too late. This offense for DCC got off to a fast start, and then your own offense didn't help you out despite getting some breaks with that fumble. And there were a couple times they were able to stop Discovery Canyon, and so that's just kind of tough on the defense there when the offense is just not able to really get anything going outside of that one drive where they had that long run and then another pretty long, like 19-20 yard run 2 plays later. So it's just rough, right? It's just rough. And so Harrison, this was a tough game to lose. And on top of that, it wasn't a close one either. So RPI-wise or rankings-wise, they're going to have to figure out how to win against these next couple of teams that they have ahead of them. So it's going to be rough, but I don't think they're quite out of it yet. We'll just have to see what happens. But like I said, final score of this game here, it is Discovery Canyon winning big over Harrison 49-6.
Obviously, you want a trainer who can make you stronger and faster with the work you put in, but what about a trainer who can help you rehab and recover like the pros? Look no further than Junkyard Training, that not only offers specific strength and speed training, but also offers a plethora of recovery and rehab techniques like cryo, cupping, recovery boots, and so much more. Learn more today by visiting junkyardtraining.net or call 303-521-7594. Once again, visit junkyardtraining.net or call 303-521-7594 and get started today.
All right, what's good, y'all? Coach V here, and I got your 3A recap here for Week 8. Some pretty big games as we approach the end of this season here. Let's go ahead and start with Thursday, October 17th. Littleton, I should probably mention this one first, honestly, but Littleton continues to forfeit games. I don't know if they'll play another game. I think I've said that before, but Stanley Lake, as a result, gets a win there, so that's definitely big time for them. Meade would go ahead and blow out Greeley Central and take care of business, really, 57-6. Sophomore Noah Chapala, 6 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns as he went off in that game. Lutheran would take care of Hinckley 50-0 here. Eli Abramson, only 5 of 7 for 121 yards, but 3 touchdowns, only 1 pick there, playing some very good football in the later half of this season. So there you go. Lewis Palmer would then blow out Palmer 49-0 here. Cole Harmon, the lead rusher, 6 carries, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that effort. Timnith would beat Niwot 44-0. Pueblo South would beat Pueblo Centennial 47-0. That's a big win for South there. Caden Herrera, a pretty good game. 15 of 17, 159 yards for passing touchdowns in that effort. Then we have Conifer knocking off Wheat Ridge here, 48-26. That is kind of a tough loss to take if you are Wheat Ridge there. You're trying to make the playoffs. This is kind of one of those games that you gotta win here, as Conifer is also trying to make the playoffs, and they're in very similar spots as of right now. But Conifer with the win. Benson White, 15 of 22, 165 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and then also had 5 carries for 144 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. That is a Playmaker of the Week candidate type of performance. So there you go there. For Wheat Ridge, though, the offense put up at least some solid numbers. Isaac McCune, 21 of 32, 200 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. Also had 83 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Bennett Wilkes, he did his thing, 9 receptions, 144 yards, 1 receiving touchdown, also had a rushing touchdown, but the defense just really struggled for Wheat Ridge here, which has kind of been the story all season, honestly, but this was a tough blow to their playoff hopes here, so there you go. We'll talk more about playoff stuff in a minute later on in this episode. And then we have Pomona playing Severance here. And by the way, I'm recording this October 20th, so if there's no stats, it just is what it is. But Pomona would beat Severance 20-7. Kind of a closer game. I could not see... I can't see the score tracker, sorry. So it was tied 7-8 at halftime there. Then Pomona would complete a touchdown pass there. 2. And then one of those was to Luis Santana with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And that would pretty much put it away, as Severance would just not be able to get anything going in that second half. So tough there. Severance really needs to win a game against hopefully one of these playoff type teams for them to build the right resume to make the playoffs. For Pomona, they continue to roll. I believe currently, according to Max Preps, number 1 in 3A, and I think for a good reason at that. Now, Friday, October 18th, here, a couple games here. Pueblo County, they take care of Sierra 49-0. Cohen Glen, 4 of 8, 59 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 72 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. Pueblo County needing every win they could get to sneak into the playoffs here. Roosevelt would beat Fort Morgan in their little rivalry, 21-0, in a very solid win, a good bounce back win for them. Jackson Craig, the leading passer, 2 of 5 for 30 yards and only 1 pick here. Not a lot of passing stats. I think these stats could just be incomplete though, but they did only score 21, 6 in the second, and then 15 in the third, so I could believe it there. Luke Vigil though, their leading rusher, 164 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in this one here. As far as tackles go, Jax Armstrong led with 11, then Noah Lucero with 2 picks, which is definitely big time in this game. Roosevelt with a nice bounce back win here after these last 2 tough losses to Windsor and Pomona here, so a good way to get back in the saddle, especially considering they play Severance, Thompson Valley, and Mountain View here in the following weeks. So there you go, Roosevelt winning and moving on, basically. So there you go there. Then we had Summit. I think they were supposed to play Green Mountain, but they would end up forfeiting, which is interesting there. Let me double check. I believe this is their first forfeit. They lost to Evergreen and Palisade by kind of a lot, so this is their first forfeit here this season. So we'll keep tabs on that development here, but that is kind of tough for Green Mountain as far as rankings and whatnot goes. You want to be able to play games and score. That is always going to help your team when it comes to rankings. So is what it is there. But moving on here, Thompson Valley would go ahead and beat Mountain View 27-7 here. A pretty solid win for them. Looking at the stats here, let's start with Mountain View. Cam Frost, 7 of 12, 113 yards, 1 touchdown. Tony Sheen with 34 rushing yards on only 50 on only 5 carries there. He also led in receiving with 3 receptions for 55 yards. So there you go, but just not enough. They would score that in the fourth quarter, so that's kind of tough there. For Thompson Valley, they scored 13 in the third, so they were up by 2 scores pretty early here in this game. But Finley Lucas, a freshman, playing quarterback, 8 of 16 for 88 yards and 1 passing touchdown here. As far as rushing goes, a pretty balanced attack. Slover at 78 yards, Chase at 76, Uratia had 62, Lucas had 53, and then Wes Bebo had 42 in this even game here. Defensively, though, played very well. Colton James, 10 tackles. That's their lead tackler for them. So another nice win for Thompson Valley as they continue to roll. Then we have Glenwood Springs. They would go ahead and play Rifle and beat them 27-0. A big win for them. Wyland Dieter, 4 of 6, 92 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. It does not look like Mason Markovich played in this game, which is interesting. for sure. But still a big win for them. Zach Bullock, 73 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Jarek Sorensen with a receiving touchdown, and Landon Treble with a receiving touchdown in this game. For Rifle, Isaac Valencia, 127 yards, 1 touchdown, but that is pretty much it in that game. So there you go. Evergreen would blow out Skyview 62-0. Grady White, 7 carries, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns. Hudson Steber with 2 sacks in that game. Windsor would take care of Northridge 45-6 here. Tegan Cole for Windsor, 12 carries, 153 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Justin Thill trying to do what he can for Northridge, but just not going his way. 4 of 16, for 87 yards and 2 interceptions. Had 53 rushing yards, but just not enough. And then Canyon City would go ahead and blow out Coronado 40-0. Gavin Reddick, 93 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Jacob Damage, 15 carries, 90 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns in that winning effort. So there you go there. And then the last game happened on Saturday. I was able to recap this game here. Blowout win by Discovery Canyon. But I do have the stats now, so let me go ahead and go over it. Hayden Jones, a good passing performance. Another good passing performance that I was able to attend, which I am thankful for. But 8 of 13, 132 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Also added on 61 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Devin Baker had 128 rushing yards and a touchdown in that game as that second leading rusher for them. Jones would find 3 different receivers on those touchdowns, and A.J. Peters, Terrence Dantzler, and Riley Strain. So there you go. For Harrison, just some struggles here. Their quarterback, Hamin Yimana, the junior, 2 of 12 for only 8 yards there. Philip Pogue, 31 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Josiah Evans, 69 rushing yards, but a lot of that came on that 51-yard run that I was able to see, but just not too much really going for them here in this game. So there you go there, but that'll do for your 3A recap here in Week 8. All right, Coach V here. We're going to go ahead and talk about 3A and the playoff picture / key games here up ahead in Week 9 here. But this is recorded as of today, October 20th. It's a Sunday, 6:30 p.m. It says, let me double check, but it says that Max Preps was updated earlier this morning and RPI was updated as soon as like an hour ago. So there you go there. Obviously subject to change, but let's just go ahead and talk about it. So the bracket, if the playoffs were to start tomorrow, as in using the data that I have right now, this is probably what it would look like. In one of our matchups, we have number 1 Thompson Valley versus number 16 Pueblo South. Number 9 Discovery Canyon versus number 8 Windsor. I believe that would be a playoff rematch of last year if that happened. So there you go. Then number 5 Lutheran versus number 12 Mountain View. Number 13 Glenwood Springs would play number 4 Pueblo Central. Number 3 Pomona would then play number 14 Conifer. Number 11 Pueblo East would play number 6 Palisade. That would be a really good matchup there, but East would have to go to Palisade for that one. And then you have number 7 Roosevelt playing number 10 Green Mountain. I believe that would be a rematch of last year's quarterfinals. And then we have number 2 Meade playing number 15 Evergreen. So those are the matchups as of right now, the playoff picture there. As you can see, some very good matchups there. I mean, it's 3A. It's always good football, honestly, but I do think of this year, there are a number of teams as deep as maybe 10? Yeah, I'd say 10 teams that could maybe make a run at state, so we'll just have to see there. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the key games here, and we'll refer back to that data and whatnot and the bracket that I just said there. But let's start with October 24th, Thursday. We have Palisade versus Steamboat Springs. Palisade currently sitting at 6, so they're very comfortable there. But Steamboat sitting at 19. If Steamboat could find a way to win, that would almost lock them into the playoffs there. But we'll see. You know, I think for them, a close loss here would be very ideal for Steamboat Springs. But if they do win, I do think that's a really good argument to put them in. They could jump all the way into that top 16. For Palisade, if they lose to Steamboat Springs, I don't know if they are ever going to be ranked inside the top 8 again later in this regular season. I mean, you got to imagine, there's not a lot of games, only 3 left, right? So I don't know if that's enough time for them to work themselves back into that top 8, and you would need other teams losing and all that, and so it would be a mess, but that's definitely a key game there. Then we have Green Mountain versus Evergreen here. Evergreen needs this game to be close as they hold on to the last spot in the playoffs, or I believe second to last spot, in the playoffs there. So they need this one to be relatively close there. They're competing for a playoff spot with teams like South, Holy Family, who's knocking on that door, Severance, Steamboat Springs, Pueblo County, Lewis Palmer, even probably Eagle Valley as well, who are all trying to get into the playoffs here. And so they need to keep this one close. I think the strength of this game shouldn't drop them too far, even if they lose big. But if they could win this game or get as close as they can to winning, then that'll help them out a lot. But that will be a key game that I know other teams are looking at, and they're saying, hey, we need Evergreen to lose here so that if we win this week, we could potentially move up. So that's going to be a key game right there. A lot of teams counting on Evergreen and counting on Green Mountain there to win. So there you go. But let's go to Friday, October 25th here. We have Wheat Ridge versus Skyview. Look, Wheat Ridge has a lot of talent, but they currently sit at 26. And honestly, it might, I don't want to put an axe in their season, but it might be too late. They can't lose to Skyview. If they lose to Skyview, then they're not going to make the playoffs. I think it's just that simple here. So they got to win that one. And then they get Evergreen the next week. That'll be their best opportunity to get a quality win on the board there. And then they get Summit, who just forfeited, so you don't even know if they're going to be able to play them. So we'll see what happens. It feels like a long shot for Wheat Ridge to make the playoffs, which is just tough, considering all the talent they have over there. The Conifer loss was pretty rough. That's kind of a game that you assume if they win, then that puts them at 4-3. And then if they win out, then, they're sitting at a pretty solid 7-3. And that's as good an argument as you could hope for, with losses to like Pomona, who's in the top 4 or 3, Green Mountain in the top 10, right? And then Hayes, that out-of-state team. But it's looking a little rough. So either way, they have to win out. I think that's really what it comes down to if you're Wheat Ridge. Now moving on, we have Pomona versus Mountain View here. I think we are considering going to this game. No promises yet, but this should be a good one. This is honestly more of a game for positioning more than anything. Neither team will drop out of the playoff picture with a loss, but I don't think Pomona can afford another loss here if they want to stay in the top 3. If they lose here, I think they drop out of the top 3 and they're not able to come back in. And that is a big deal considering, right now Pomona would go ahead and play Conifer, and that's pretty solid. If they drop to 4, then they play Glenwood Springs. 5, then they play Mountain View, who's underrated, right? 6, they would play East, another underrated team. So either way, if you're Pomona, you don't want to slide more than you need. This is already competitive as is, so you got to win here. For Mountain View, I think a win here would probably solidify them a spot in the top 10. It would be very close to the back end, but I think it would solidify them a spot in the top 10. So there you go there. But like I said, if either team loses, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Then we have Roosevelt versus Severance here. Severance absolutely needs to win to make the playoffs. Despite being 2-5, Severance is sitting at 18. They're only 2 spots out of the playoffs. So a win here would be absolutely massive. They gotta either win this one or the Mountain View game, in my opinion, to properly build the resume to make the playoffs here. And that does include a must-win versus Fort Morgan at the end of the season. So they gotta go 2-1. either way to end their season here. So they're going to need either this win or the next one to Mountain View for them to make the playoffs. It's going to be really hard for them to make the playoffs as is. I mean, they're at 2-5. So even if you go 2-1, you're looking at 4-6, but strength of schedule should get you in there. Anything below 4 losses or 4 wins would put them out of the playoffs, I think. So that's tough. For Roosevelt, I mean, they're just looking to continue to jockey for a good position. A loss here would obviously drop them, especially when you got a Windsor team at 6-1 at 8. So that's tough there. Then you have Rifle versus Eagle Valley. Eagle Valley currently sitting at 4-3 here, sitting at 23, so a little bit out of playoff contention here. It's more of a long shot, I would think, than anything, but they have to win out here to have their best chance to make the playoffs, so that includes this game against Rifle that they have. Then we have Discovery Canyon versus Lewis Palmer. LP really needs to win or keep this game close for them to make the playoffs here. As of right now, Lewis Palmer is currently sitting at 22, so in kind of a tough spot here. Now, if DCC loses, they shouldn't drop out of the playoff picture, but they cannot afford a slide if they want the best matchup. I believe currently, right now, Discovery Canyon would play Windsor, which, I mean, it sounds rough, but DCC's at 9, right? So you just want to hope for a better matchup possibly than that, especially considering how good Windsor is. So we'll see there. But this is absolutely vital for Lewis Palmer to win here. They gotta beat Discovery Canyon or get as close as possible to beating them, maybe within a score, honestly, at that point. Then you have Pueblo South versus Harrison here. Pueblo South currently sitting at 16, Harrison at 21. After that tough loss to Discovery Canyon. South definitely cannot afford to lose here because that would definitely risk them dropping out of the playoffs. And then at this point, Harrison, they're running out of games to build a resume worthy of the playoffs. Right now, I mean, they play Pueblo Centennial and Palmer. Both of those teams are ranked behind them. So this is their last team ranked in front of them that they're going to play. So Harrison absolutely needs to win this game here. And I'm assuming they beat, their last two in Centennial and Palmer. It's not guaranteed, though, but it starts with a win here. If they don't win this one, I don't know if there's a path to the playoffs for them. So there you go. Then we have a classic here, Lutheran versus Holy Family. Holy Family currently sitting just outside the playoffs at 17. They are scrapping. The defending champs are scrapping to try to get back in. Regardless, this game should definitely help their playoff hopes here, but I think a win would make it almost undeniable to keep them out of the playoffs. Another Lutheran loss, though, that would drop them out of the top 5, I think, and that could be rough. There could be some rough matchups there, potentially maybe even risk a matchup with Windsor in round 1, which you don't want. So we'll see, but I think at the end, Holy Family really needs to win this game for them to at least make an appearance in these playoffs. They play Hinckley, which isn't going to help them at all after this game, and then they play Stanley Lake here, who is currently sitting at 31, so that's not going to help them out either. This is going to be probably their last decent game to make it in. If they could win, that probably puts them in, because I assume they're going to beat Stanley Lake and Hinckley. So we'll see, but a massive game for Holy Family. If they don't win, then I think things are definitely up in the air for a couple weeks longer for that last seed. So there you go. Then we have Pueblo County versus Pueblo Central here. Central, in my opinion, kind of lucky to be at number 4 right now, considering they just lost to Pueblo East, who is sitting at 11. So they can't afford any losses if they want to keep their positioning. That's just what it is, right? For County, they're currently sitting at 4-3, and they are currently at 20. So a loss to the number 20 team would not do them well. That would probably for sure drop them out of the not out of the playoffs, but out of the top 5 here in these playoffs if they were to lose there. So Central definitely needs a bounce back win. For County, if you beat Central, that'll give them a very big boost to their playoff resume. And considering they play Canyon City next and then East, I mean, that's huge, right? They got to win 2 of these last 3, though. So you got to either beat Central or East here. And then, see what happens from there. I think that's their best chance to make the playoffs. Beat either Central or East, and then you have to win the Canyon City game for them to make the playoffs. And I think that could definitely be a path for them. Ideally, if they beat both Central and East, they for sure make the playoffs. But that's tough. Both tough teams. Got to watch both of them play each other, and they're good squads over there. So it's going to come down to the wire for County, but they got a lot of opportunities to claim that last spot in the playoffs. And, if you listened to what I just said about a lot of these other teams, then you know that some of these other squads, they're running out of playoff-worthy opponents to potentially beat and make the playoffs. So once they run out of those opponents, then they're looking at other teams now to help them out. So for County, their future and fate is probably in their hands in the most direct way out of all the teams looking to make it in. Out of, Holy Family trying to make it in. Severance trying to make it in. Severance does have 2 good games left as well. Holy Family only has this game left, and then I don't know if they're going to get a chance. Same with Steamboat Springs here. Let me just check Steamboat. Yeah, they play Palisade and Glenwood Springs here, so they have some solid chances, but those teams aren't ranked as high as some of these other ones, so it is what it is, right? It's going to be really interesting to see how these teams play moving forward, but that's our playoff picture. Those are the key games to look out for here in Week 9 in 3A, as we're looking to have another great playoffs this year, per usual in 3A. A lot of very competitive teams, and I think even that back end there's a lot of good teams that are going to be competing for a playoff spot, and the majority of them are not going to be able to make the playoffs, which is unfortunate. So there you go, but we'll just have to see how it all unfolds.
What is good, y'all? This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and I am very excited to be your guide through Week 8 in the 4A classification for the 2024 Colorado High School football season. We had some very exciting games, a couple of upsets here, and all of these were league games, as we have a lot of these leagues coming down to the wire, with a few games actually deciding the league here coming in the next couple of weeks. And with that all being said, let's not waste any more time and jump right into these Thursday games. Starting us off here, we have Northfield, who destroyed Denver North 65-12 on the road. Sophomore QB Cash Lacey was perfect here for Northfield, going 10 for 10 for 152 yards and 4 TDs. Xavier Chineth had 103 yards and 2 touchdowns on 10 carries, and Xavier Ward had 92 yards and a touchdown on 9 carries, plus a 30-yard touchdown reception. On defense here for Northfield, Dylan Anderson had 2 interceptions, and Antoine Collins had a sack, plus a 14-yard touchdown reception on offense. Moving on now, Heritage dominated Bear Creek 61-23 on the road. No stats here for Heritage, but for Bear Creek, sophomore QB Riley Wilson went 23 for 40 for 301 yards with 3 touchdowns and a pick. His lead receiver was Kamari May with 11 receptions for 116 yards and a touchdown. And that takes us to our next one, as Ryder Easton's 4 touchdowns hoist Loveland over Silver Creek 34-0 at home. The senior QB balled out, going 14 for 21 for 175 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception, plus 102 yards and 2 more touchdowns on 15 carries. Zane DeSouza was the lead receiver with 88 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6 catches, and sophomore running back Dion Christopher put up 123 yards and a touchdown on 12 carries. On defense here for Loveland, Cody Moore had 3.5 sacks and 6 tackles. Gavin Ishmael's 7 total touchdowns gave Frederick the 49-6 win over Pooter. Yet another Playmaker of the Week worthy performance here from the senior QB Gavin Ishmael, who went 17 for 24 for 326 yards and 6 touchdowns and no turnovers. Plus he also added 49 yards and a touchdown on 5 carries. His lead receiver was Gisrael Palma with 127 yards and 3 touchdowns on 6 receptions. Dakota Ridge keeps it rolling here as they ran all over Highlands Ranch in their 47-7 win on the road. Dakota Ridge ran for 250 yards and 5 touchdowns in this win as a team, and Kellen Berenson went 8 for 9 for 183 yards and a touchdown. On defense here, Brady Palladino had 2 sacks, and Asa Davidson blocked a field goal, and Kobe Stewart had an interception. In one of our last Thursday games, Grand Junction's league championship and playoff hopes are more alive than ever after they beat Centaurus 42-22 at home. The triple-headed monster of Will Applegate, Matthias Martinez, and Noah Watkins combined for 253 yards and 5 touchdowns in this win. That game against Sand Creek in the last game of the season will most likely be for a playoff spot and the league championship. For Centaurus, head coach Aaron Carlson's pass-heavy offense was in full swing here as sophomore QB Halas Weiss threw a ridiculous 67 passing attempts. That is definitely the most of any QB so far this season in the state of Colorado. In our second to last of the Thursday games, Pueblo West is eyeing that 1 seed in the playoffs after squashing Widefield 41-0 to stay undefeated. No stats in that one, so that takes us to our last of the Thursday games where Rampart shut out Liberty 33-0 on the road. Camden Bruns ran for 2 touchdowns, and on defense, Mark Supplitson had 2 interceptions, including 1 pick six here for Rampart in this win. And that takes us to the Friday games. In our first of the Friday games, Mesa Ridge loses yet another close game, this time to Montrose 32-28 at home. No stats for Montrose, of course, but Trevone Salas ran for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns on 14 carries for Mesa Ridge, and Kobe Dooley had 4 receptions for 35 yards and a touchdown. QB Bryce Reel had a solid game, going 14 for 19 for 157 yards with a touchdown and an interception, plus 51 yards and a touchdown on 11 carries on the ground. Next year, George Washington moves to 3-0 in league play after their 35-21 win over Montbello. No stats in that one, so let's go ahead and talk about this next one here, where Durango ran all over Air Academy in their 58-0 win on the road. Durango ran for 292 yards and 5 touchdowns as a team, with Julius Arredondo rushing for 2 of those, plus he also had a sack on defense. Also on defense for Durango, Wyatt Bartell had 10 tackles and 3 tackles for loss, and then Durango forced 5 fumbles as a team, with Walker Jones forcing 2 of those. Cheyenne Mountain stomped on Thornton 56-6 at home. 6 different Red-Tail Hawks ran for a touchdown, and then they ran for 292 yards as a team. QB Sam Hawker threw 2 touchdowns and rushed for another. Then on defense, Darius Hughes had 2 sacks, and Christian Barnard and Connor Cavini both had an interception. Sand Creek is keeping their eyes on a league championship after shutting out Gateway 52-0 on the road. Ethan Mangrum did his thing, rushing for 159 yards and 3 touchdowns on only 11 carries, and then he added a passing touchdown and a pick six and a half a sack on defense. He just does it all for Sand Creek. Also on defense here for Sand Creek, Elijah Brothers had 2 interceptions, and they also had 5.5 sacks as a team. Next here, Monarch blew out Greeley West 53-6 at home. Malachi Payne had 2 rushing touchdowns for Monarch in this win. On defense, Wyatt Carlucci had 10 tackles, and Chase Gray had an interception. Monarch will play Frederick in Week 9 for the 4A North 1 League Championship. Broomfield shut out Grand Junction Central 42-0 at home. Darian Jackson went 6 for 8 for 170 yards and 3 touchdowns, and his leading receiver was Michael Benner with 88 yards and 2 touchdowns on 3 receptions, and he also added an interception on defense. Also on defense for Broomfield, Tyler Crew had 2 sacks, C.T. Worley had a sack, and John Singleton had an interception. Ponderosa dominated Golden 42-14 on the road. The Alcapin Veezy went crazy with 169 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 11 carries. On defense, Ryan Tongren had 2 tackles for loss, and Wyatt Bueller and Troy McWhorter both had 1 sack and 1 forced fumble each. Doherty made light work of Falcon in their 52-0 win at home. Junior QB Leland Frescus went 7 for 11 for 80 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he also added 59 yards and a touchdown on 5 carries. Darren Tiggett had a nice game as well with 73 yards and 2 touchdowns on 10 carries, and Doherty's leading receiver was Brody Knoll with 34 yards and 2 touchdowns on 4 receptions. On defense for Doherty, Jalen Hale had 2 interceptions. Colby Holmes threw for 6 touchdowns in Longmont's 48-28 win at home over Skyline. Colby Holmes had probably his best game of his high school varsity career, going 21 for 24 for 383 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 1 interception. What's crazy is that he only threw the ball to 2 different players, that being the Foote brothers, junior wide receiver Joey Foote with 150 yards and 3 touchdowns on 12 receptions, and then his freshman brother Jacob Foote with a ridiculous stat line of 233 yards, 3 touchdowns on 9 receptions. On defense here for Longmont, Ben Starkle had 13 sacks, and then he also had a rushing touchdown on offense. This win keeps Longmont's playoff hopes alive, and they will play Grand Junction Central next week to decide who will stay in the playoffs. In our last of the Friday games, Palmer Ridge continues to ride the Javier Elvira train here as they win 42-7 at home over Vista Ridge. Elvira had a ridiculous stat line of 290 yards and 2 touchdowns on 23 carries, and then Jackson Mabe also ran for 2 touchdowns here for the Bears. Lastly here, Riverdale Ridge beat down Adams City 47-0. No stats in that one, so let's talk about our one and only Saturday game from October 19th. Thomas Jefferson shut out Aurora Central 34-0. Luke Kuehler passed for 3 touchdowns and an interception on 6 of 12 passing for 129 yards. And then Shane Curry, Javen Brown, and Noah Klein all caught 1 touchdown pass each. And that will do it here in Week 8 of the 4A classification for the 2024 high school football season. This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and I want to thank you all for listening, and I will see you all in Week 9. Peace out. What is good, y'all? This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and it is time to look at the playoff picture here in the 4A classification for the 2024 high school football season. Now, as of this recording on October 21st, we have some playoff seedings set here. Obviously, they're not set in stone with 2 more weeks left here of games, but we have a decent picture of what things are going to look like here in the playoffs in a few weeks now. Now, starting off with the first round games, we have Loveland and Doherty facing off against each other. These are 2 pretty evenly matched teams. The winner of this game would face Pueblo West, who will most likely finish the season undefeated. Then after that, we have Vista Ridge versus Longmont. I think it's pretty interesting that Longmont's even in here in the first place. I know they've struggled a bit, but the Foote brothers and Colby Holmes are holding things down over there and keeping them in this playoff picture. They need to beat Grand Junction Central next week to stay here at that 24 spot. The winner of that game would play Ponderosa. Next year, we have 21-seeded Golden facing off against 12-seeded Monarch. I feel like these are 2 pretty evenly matched squads. I'd probably give the edge to Monarch. They've definitely been taking care of business this year. But Golden has a very tough schedule, and they are battle-tested, so I wouldn't be surprised if they won this game to face 5-seeded Broomfield in the next round. Another first-round matchup, we have the undefeated Riverdale Ridge at the 13 seed facing off against Air Academy, who would be the 20 seed. Riverdale Ridge would probably most likely get the win here. They are undefeated on the season. They haven't had the toughest schedule, but they have beaten teams that are similar in skill level to Air Academy pretty easily, so I would expect them to win that game. And the winner would face Montrose in the next round, and we know how insanely consistent Montrose is. So that would be a tough matchup for sure. But that is a tough matchup for Montrose, too, to face a potentially undefeated Riverdale Ridge in the first round after getting a bye. Next year, Northfield is facing off against Frederick. The winner would face Palmer Ridge. Frederick has been rolling as of late, and they are facing Monarch here in Week 9 for the league championship. In Northfield, they just run the ball like crazy, man. I would not be surprised at all if Northfield won this game. They like to pound the rock more than most teams, and that's just hard to stop. So, and winner would face Palmer Ridge, obviously, and that's a team that is going to run the ball like crazy. And honestly, I don't know if either of these teams can stop that attack, but that should be a good first-round matchup for sure. Next year, 11-seeded Rampart would face off against the 22-seeded Grand Junction Central. Grand Junction Central is another team. I find it very interesting that they are even in the playoffs in the first place. They have definitely struggled so far this season. They are facing off against Longmont, and it looks like whoever wins that game will most likely stay in the playoff picture here. And the other team could definitely fall out or be just outside. In our last two of the first round matchups, Silver Creek and Heritage are going to face off. Silver Creek's rocking the 23 seed and Heritage is rocking that 10 seed. Winner would face Durango. And honestly, I like Heritage in this matchup by a lot against Silver Creek. And then against Durango, they could definitely make some noise in that game. I feel like with their tough schedule that they've had so far this year, that they could definitely hold their own against Durango and maybe even get a win there to move on to the quarterfinals. Lastly, in our first round matchups, we have Grand Junction facing off against Highlands Ranch, with Grand Junction rocking that 15 seed and Highlands Ranch rocking the 18 seed. These are two teams that struggled a lot last year, but they have definitely turned things around this year, with Grand Junction getting put in that I-25 league, and they have definitely fared well there. And this is a very deep senior class for that Grand Junction squad, and they're just ready to win now. So I actually like them in this contest against Highlands Ranch, but either way, it should be a close game. The winner of that game would face Dakota Ridge, who might just be the scariest opponent that anyone could face here in 4A. They have been so consistent and have had such a tough schedule this year, and they just prevailed at every step of the way. So honestly, I don't know if either of those teams can make that Dakota Ridge game close, but we'll see what happens. So with that playoff picture talk out of the way, let's talk about some key games here for Week 9 that could definitely impact these rankings here. Starting off on October 24th, that is a Thursday, we have Highlands Ranch at Heritage. Highlands Ranch has a chance to make a statement and rise a couple spots if they can somehow find a way to beat Heritage. And then Heritage can look to potentially have a first-round bye if they can win their last two games of the season. Next year, we have Palmer Ridge at Rampart. A win or close game here for Rampart would keep them in that 9 to 13 seed in the playoffs, which is definitely where they want to be. And with Palmer Ridge, if they keep on feeding Javier Elvira the way they are, I don't expect them to lose any more regular season games and go into playoffs with a very high seed. Next year, we have Thomas Jefferson at George Washington. Thomas Jefferson should be able to grab a playoff spot here if they can win their last two games against George Washington, Montbello. And then George Washington could end Thomas Jefferson's playoffs hopes here with a win. And that would be George Washington's fourth in a row if they can pull it off. Lastly, in the Thursday games, Doherty is going to visit Mesa Ridge. Mesa Ridge needs to win out if they want to keep that first round bye. And then Doherty wants to keep this one close to avoid potentially falling out of the playoff picture or getting one of those very low seeds. Next year, let's talk about the Friday games on October 25th. Ponderosa will be facing Bear Creek at Bear Creek. Ponderosa can solidify a first-round bye if they can beat Bear Creek this week, and then Heritage next week. And then Bear Creek could realistically sneak in the playoffs here with a win. Coming up next, we have Grand Junction at Cheyenne Mountain. Cheyenne Mountain can ruin Grand Junction's playoff hopes by beating them in this game at home. If Grand Junction wins, though, then they will face Sand Creek in Week 10, and that game would turn into the I-25 League Championship for a playoff spot. Unfortunately, in the I-25 League, only the League Championship can make the playoffs, so unfortunately, it will only be Grand Junction or Sand Creek there in that spot. Now let's talk about Air Academy at Vista Ridge. The Cadets are hanging onto a playoff spot by a literal threat at the moment, so a win or a close game is absolutely vital for them to stay in this mix. Vista Ridge could potentially find a way to get a first-round bye if they can win their Air Academy and Durango games next week. Pooter at Silver Creek. Silver Creek needs a win to stay in the playoff picture. They are just barely inside right now, and I do expect them to take care of Pooter. Next year, Centaurus at Sand Creek. Centaurus can end Sand Creek's chances of a playoff spot with a win, and then if Sand Creek wins, then that game against Grand Junction in Week 10 becomes the league championship, and I am definitely going to try and make my way out for that one. Next year, Longmont will be facing off against Grand Junction Central at Grand Junction Central. Both teams are currently in the playoff picture, but a loss for either of these squads could most likely take them out of the playoff picture completely. Central obviously has the advantage with this being a home game and a very long drive for Longmont. Next year, it is Monarch at Frederick. This game will be the 4A North 1 League Championship. The winner will take the league title and a higher seed in the playoffs. So that is a massive matchup coming at you next week in Week 9. Speaking of huge matchups in league championships, we have Riverdale Ridge at Broomfield. This will be Riverdale Ridge's hardest test this season by a long shot. Winner of this game will take the 4A North 2 League Championship, and both teams might get a first-round bye if Riverdale Ridge wins a close game. Lastly here, we have Golden at Dakota Ridge. Golden is in jeopardy of having an extremely low seed in the playoffs or just missing the playoffs entirely if they get blown out in this game. Their season will come down to this game and their Week 10 matchup against Highlands Ranch. And that, folks, will do it here in this playoff preview for the 4A classification. This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and I want to thank you all for listening, and I will see you all in Week 9.
Hey, everybody. It is Cody Stoffer with the Playmakers Corner podcast here, and we got another 5A recap for you. So let's go ahead and jump into it here. There are some pretty monumental games this past week here. Starting on Thursday, not so monumental here as Overland beats Lakewood 50-19, but it was a battle of freshman quarterbacks, so I always like to keep tabs on some of these younger guys. Caston Steinke here, or Steinke, not sure how to say that, but out of Lakewood, 19 of 40, 181 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions for Lakewood. Maybe something to look forward to for this Tigers program here. But on the other end of things, over at Overland, Angel Chavez here, 14 of 20, 265 yards, and 4 touchdowns to just 1 interception. Finding his fellow freshman, DJ Davenport here, 7 times for 193 yards and 2 scores, while also finding senior Avante Hendricks for 2 touchdowns as well. And then Jarius Ward did Jarius Ward things, 10 rushes for 111 yards. Boulder beat North Glen 17-14. And in probably one of the big, if not the biggest game of Thursday night, Arvada West beats Denver East 29-21. For Denver East here, Sean Campbell had 22 carries for 145 yards and a score, but it was just a really tough game for Declan McDonald here, throwing 3 interceptions. Those interceptions being forced by Atticus Tillman, Jaden Green, and Jesse Truesdale here. Defensively, for Denver East, Humphrey III matched his level of name with 3 TFLs as well as 2 sacks. But Arvada West on offense was just as balanced as you could literally be here. 22 passes, 22 rushes, and plenty of scoring here in this 1-score win over the Angels, 29-21, and an all-around great team win. Grandview staves off a Cherokee Trail comeback. The Wolves jumped out to a 7-0 lead, but the Cougars strike for 13 points in the third quarter. But that 14th point would have really made a difference as Grandview strikes in the last frame and converts to win 14-13. Brian Tucker for Cherokee Trail had 15 carries for 74 yards and the 2 touchdowns. Meanwhile, the Grandview offense was headlined by Chris Blanks, who was the focus with 15 carries for 79 yards and a score. Caleb Yamas here had 74 yards as well, and Blitz McCarty ran for the other score. In this defensive struggle here, Blake Rodriguez was the leading tackler for the Cougars, sitting at 12. Meanwhile, Brandon Kyrie led the Wolves with 14 alongside Jack Nayenbear here. Getting into the backfield was A.J. Maroney and freshman Marquez Lawrence here a couple times apiece for the Wolves. And the pass rush was also very prominent as Grandview had 5 sacks as a team in this win. Moving on to Friday, Chatfield stomped Denver South 49-7. The thing that caught my eye here was freshman tailback Bryson Leal here running the ball 12 times for 103 yards and a hat trick of touchdowns in the win. Now, arguably one of the biggest games of Friday was the showdown between Ralston Valley and Columbine here. And on a wet and cold Friday night, Columbine looked to remain undefeated. Meanwhile, Ralston Valley was looking to play spoiler. And through one frame, it was a 1-point game. Foreshadowing. And Ralston Valley was leading after that and then built off of that in the second quarter, going into halftime with a 28-13 lead. The lead was not safe, though, as Columbine would respond with a touchdown and 2-point conversion to make it a 7-point game with over half the quarter to go. And then they'd score again to tie it before the end of the third quarter. And with the fourth quarter being a stalemate here, these teams would go into overtime 28-28. The Stangs would get the first swing and score and convert a 1-point PAT. Meanwhile, Columbine would respond with a touchdown and go for the win, but would be unsuccessful, leading to Rawson Valley's upset 35-34 win. Now, for the West Rebels here, Goodwin went 4 of 7 for 117 yards, finding Basinger for a passing touchdown, which is always nice to highlight. Meanwhile, James and Mark Snyder both ran for a pair of scores out of the backfield. Meanwhile, on the W side here, this defense here that held the Wing T to a lower yards per carry average than it has seen in quite some time involved great efforts, Herculean efforts even, from Matt Gates, Robert Mendez, and Aiden G., who all had double-digit tackles in this close win. Out of their own backfield for the Stings, a steady diet of Ethan Shirazi and Zeke Andrews yielded over 160 yards, with Shirazi and Benalo both finding pay dirt. Zeke Andrews here was just on fire this game, going 18 of 22 for 179 yards and a hat trick of passing touchdowns, primarily finding Levi Rios here 7 times for 108 yards and 2 scores. Moving on here, Mountain Vista runs away on the road, 49-6 over Fruta. Madreski here, 14 of 24, 276 yards and 4 scores. And what I think might be a season high, 2 interceptions. Don't take your foot off the gas now, Austin. Meanwhile, Jack Blaze, 14 carries, 99 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Carter Daniels in a Playmaker of the Week level performance, 25 tackles, 1 TFL, and a 51-yard pick 6. Regis rolls over Douglas County, 51-7. Freshman Luke Rubley here, 22 of 31 for 253 yards and 3 scores to 1 interception, with 8 different receivers catching passes in this win. Speaking of overtime, Rock Canyon and Castleview save all of their scoring for extras here. Rock Canyon first struck in the third quarter, taking a 6-0 lead into the fourth before only scoring a field goal that would not be only matched, but even further driven in by Montero here, going 3 of 4 on field goals, sending this game into extras 9-9. Both teams would then score and convert PATs in overtime, making it 16-16. And in the last overtime, both teams would score, but Rock Canyon would go for 2 to try and end it and not get it. That seems to be the theme here. 2-point attempts, not lucky this week. Castleview scrapes by 23-22 in a thriller. Out of the Rock Canyon backfield, Tyler Meyer had 25 carries for 129 yards. Meanwhile, Mason Mills found pay dirt twice, and Evan Diebold found it once. Castleview, on the other hand, had Camden Tobler doing the heavy lifting here, 21 carries for 110 yards and a score. Derek Gordon was 2 of 2 for 35 yards and a passing touchdown. I'm not sure why the volume was so low, if he was hurt and subbed in from injury to win this game, so that is still an interesting development that we're waiting to hear more on. Arapahoe rolls over Smoky Hill, 55-10. Get a lot of young guys in this game with early looks. Theo Lee throwing a touchdown and Jaramillo here rushing 10 times for 109 yards. But before they got in, the vets got it done. Trajan Frazier, 8 carries, 119 yards, a pair of scores. Mitch Price lighting up the scoreboard with 4 passing touchdowns. And overall, these 5 total passing touchdowns were caught by the likes of Andrew Smart with 2, Carter Landon with 1, and Kevin Lyons with 2. Defensively, Braden Snow had 4 TFLs, and Brody Seek had 3, and the rest of the team notched another 4. Meanwhile, Snow and Seek also had 3 total sacks in this game, with 9 hurries from the Warriors to boot in this Centennial League win. Fossil Ridge laps Prairie View 45-13 after scoring all the points in the first half. Kubat here, 13 of 14, 241 yards and 4 scores. Marcus Mosier hat trick with 6 receptions and 160 yards to lead to those 3 scores. Valor smacks Thunder Ridge 47-0. Dawson Olk had a pretty solid game here, going 19 of 32, 203 yards and 3 scores, 2 of those going to Cash Spence, and I really think it's important to get Dawson Olk going and comfortable here heading into what is going to become the more important part of the season, the postseason. Erie smacks Mullen 48-13. The defense forced 3 interceptions and took some to the house. Meanwhile, the run game was going for nearly 8 yards per carry as they just controlled this game. Fairview rolls themselves 35-7 over Brighton. Jordan Burchell, 11 carries, 102 yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns, complemented by Kai Ellison's 13 of 22, 132-yard stat line. Fort Collins beats Rocky Mountain by 8 here. The Lobos backfield committee combined for those 3 scores between Cody Arnett, Peyton Matkin, and Yusuf Muhammad. Meanwhile, defensively, Ryan Olsen and Eric Jacobson both forced interceptions. Meanwhile, Swiger and Laughlin flew around the field with 11 tackles apiece. But the Lambkins defense was a bit more suffocating with an eye-popping 9 tackles for loss, 9 hurries, and 2 sacks, holding the Lobos to less than 4 yards per carry. Meanwhile, offensively, Justin Crawford still passes for over 200 yards, finding Griffin Campaign for a score, as well as Levi Hermson 12 times for 147 yards and his score. But his interceptions definitely kept Rocky Mountain in reach here. And so they had to rely on the ground game here, try and balance it out a little bit. And Jack McKen here ran very well, 27 carries for 152 yards and 2 scores to help secure this crosstown win. Pine Creek handles Chaparral 49-8 with 7 rushing touchdowns, with Kel Petrie, Brady Walden, Emmanuel Hill, Jesse Kelly, and Xavier Lucas, with Kelly and Lukes both having over 100 yards rushing. Legacy beats Rangeview 41-3, and I have to ask myself, I feel like every single time I look at a Legacy score, they have a new quarterback. I might be going crazy, but anyhow, Andrew Gardner throws 3 touchdowns and runs for 1, while Tyler Anderson eclipses 100 rushing yards and scores 1 himself in Legacy's win 41-3 over Rangeview. Horizon beats Vista Peak Prep 27-12. Alex Birch has an uncharacteristically rough game, but Jeremiah Martinez picks up the slack, rushing 35 times for 278 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and led the team in receptions with 4 for 64 yards and another score here. And that is every touchdown for those counting at home for Horizon in their 27-12 win over Vista Peak Prep. Westminster beats Mountain Range 28-15. Mason Kiewit rushes for over 200 yards and throws 1-1. But Nehemiah Malloyd gets in. Not really sure if they're just seeing what they have or if Mason might be injured here. But their backup QB gets in. And then freshman running back Kevin Button runs for 2 scores. Meanwhile, the Wolves' defense was anchored by Philip Cruz with 11 tackles and 3 for loss. Meanwhile, Abraham Montez led the team with 12 tackles and also had an interception. Creek embarrasses Eagle Crest 44-0, and Legend cruises past Fountain Fort Carson 42-7. And that actually does it for the 5A recap. Stick around for the playoff preview, though, or update, I should say. All right, we are right back. No rest for the wicked. Let's go ahead and take a look at these CHSAA seating index / max preps rankings here. So the way that this works is it's a 50-50 split between the max preps rankings and the CHSAA RPI rankings here. And right in the middle is where we land. 24 teams make the playoffs, with the top 8 teams all getting a bye. And then it goes from there. So if that were the case here, the way that this would break down is that the top 8 teams, if the season ended today, would be Cherry Creek at number 1, Littleton West at 2, Valor Christian at 3, ahead of Mountain Vista at 4, despite Mountain Vista's big win over Valor Christian, so still a little, that at some point, right, head-to-head has to matter. But anyways, Ralston Valley at 5, also behind a team that is 7-1 who they beat. And Legend at 6 here at 7-1. Fairview 8-0 at the 7 seed. And Chatfield 6-2, barely holding on to this 8 seed. And other teams are very tight on their trail here. And beginning with the teams that would be in this 9 through 20-something-ish range here, you have Erie at 9 at 6-2. Pine Creek 10. Regis Jesuit 11. Castleview 12, Arvada West 13, Arapahoe 14, 15 is Denver East, 16 Fossil Ridge, 17 Eagle Crest, 18 Cherokee Trail, 19 Grandview, 20 Douglas County, 21 Mullen, 22 Fort Collins, 23 Fountain Fort Carson, and 24 Rock Canyon. But something to keep in mind here is that winning your league does matter here. So looking at this, obviously, every single Centennial League team is in here other than Smoky Hill as it stands. As far as the 5A Front Range North, there's going to be a huge game between Fairview and Fossil Ridge at some point. Brighton here is at the 25 spot, but they're actually not in as good of a position as you might think here because of where they are in their league. Legacy, despite being the 26th seed and 3-5 here, they are 2-1 in league and theoretically have a chance, if they were to beat Erie, to pop up into this as a league winner, and Erie would probably retain their spot based off of strength of schedule and everything like that. Mullen here is really surprisingly 2-6 and still in the postseason, but they are 2-1 in league as well. Now, obviously, the 5A Metro is a very, very strong league here. Ralston Valley, Columbine, Arvada West, Denver East, and Chatfield are all doing well in league here, and they're all doing well in the rankings. 3 of those teams, obviously, are in the top 8 being considered for buys, and then Arvada West, Denver East are, still in contention, but Denver South is probably fully eliminated as they sit at 31 here. Now, this is the interesting league right here, because this is probably the 24 seed that would kick Rock Canyon out based off of them winning their league, and that is Overland, who's right now is ranked 28th and are 4-4, but are undefeated in league with a huge win over Westminster. Westminster is 6-2 and might miss the playoffs because of strength of schedule, as well as losing that game to Overland. You also have Boulder to consider, who is 4-4 and is technically second in their league right now, being currently undefeated. So one of those teams, Overland, Boulder, or Westminster, if Boulder beats Overland and then Westminster beats Boulder or some combination of that, that could get really messy and lead to our 24 seed. Meaning that the very first matchup of the postseason, or I should say going from bottom seed up, would be the 24 and the 9, which would be either Overland, Boulder, or Westminster against Erie. Probably not a game that I would pay for a ticket for, but, it'd be neat to see Jarius Ward and see how he does against those defenses, or Mason Kiewit and see how he stacks up. The 10 and 23 matchup, according to this RPI, would be Pine Creek and Fountain Fort Carson, so a little crosstown, Southern Colorado kind of showdown a little bit. Fort Collins and Regis Jesuit would play each other. Castleview and Mullen would play each other at 12 and 21, respectively. Douglas County is the 20 seed. They would play Arvada West, and probably wouldn't pay money to see that one. Arapahoe and Grandview are currently slated for a rematch, a Centennial League rematch. Cherokee Trail and Denver East at 18 and 15, respectively. And then Fossil Ridge and Eagle Crest are 16 and 17. And that's kind of where it's at. The teams, like I said, just outside. We're looking at Brighton at 25. Even Rock Canyon at 24 is kind of on the outside looking in. On the bubble here, for sure, Fountain Fort Carson at 4-4. Fort Collins at 4-4. Mullen at 2-6. Douglas County at 4-4 are kind of all, in my opinion, on the bubble. And then just behind here, Brighton at 25 at 3-5. Legacy at 3-5 at 26. Westminster 6-2 at 27. Overland at 4-4. And then technically Boulder, because of their league at 34, is technically on the cusp. I don't think they will win this league, but they are 3-0 right now, and they're kind of warming up right now. So that is where those are at as far as the rankings go. Now, as far as big games that I have circled for this week, we have some huge ones on Thursday as far as Legacy, who's ranked 25th on max reps, and Erie ranked 9th. That is at 6:30 p.m. at Erie's house. If Erie wins this, league is as good as theirs. Meanwhile, Chatfield and Arvada West play each other on Thursday night. Chatfield has not won against a league opponent yet other than Denver South, so they are really looking to be a quality team like Arvada West and hopefully entrench themselves into a good spot to potentially earn a bye. Now, moving on to Friday, October 25th, there's going to be some important games here, but some of the ones that I have circled are Eagle Crest at Grandview. These teams are in very similar positions, as well as Cherokee Trail at Arapahoe. Any Centennial League matchup is probably worth monitoring as far as movement in the postseason goes. Good luck to my alma mater and Coach Brayton, who's been a really awesome guy. Quick shout out to him for helping welcome me to the Arapahoe community and hooking me up with some gear. So good luck to the seniors in that game against Cherokee Trail, and go Arapahoe. Just going to have a little bit of bias there. Now, pivoting back to important games, Denver East, Ralston Valley, 7 p.m. at Ralston Valley. If Denver East wants any kind of chance, they're going to have to bring their A game and are trying to put themselves in a position where they're not really worried about the postseason, but as of right now, a little bit of a concern. Fossil Ridge Fairview, this is definitely for that league here. There's no other way around it. That is the Front Range North League. Both these teams are sitting atop of it, with Fairview at 7-0, or Fairview undefeated at 8-0, and Fossil Ridge also undefeated in league, at least. So that's going to be a really important game for those teams that could determine our league winner. Now, Brighton and Fort Collins also play. They are both teams on the bubble, so this is a very important game. If Brighton wins, they could probably just swap with Fort Collins straight up, and that would be scary. And then Boulder and Overland are playing. This could be the league title. It is at home for Overland, so that should be a pretty interesting game, all things considered. Rock Canyon and Mountain Vista are also playing. Mountain Vista is rolling right now. They are trying to, earn one of those higher seeds, and Rock Canyon kind of has their back against the wall. So this is definitely a trap game for Mountain Vista just because of how ferocious Rock Canyon could come out. And then Regis Jesuit and Pine Creek play on Saturday. This game is at Pine Creek, so that is going to be huge for that southern kind of league. I want to say it's just called the Southern. So Legend is currently number 1. Regis is undefeated at 3-0 as well in that league. So Pine Creek has a chance to take them down a notch, or Regis has a chance to really make an exciting game here in a couple weeks. So that is the playoff update as well as games to monitor for 5A in the postseason. In other news, though, Austin Madreski, congratulations on becoming Colorado's all-time touchdown passing leader. He is now sitting at 131 career passing touchdowns, passing he who shan't be named here, who was number 1 at 130. So once again, congratulations to Austin. He came into the season 40 behind, and he still has 2 regular season games to play, as well as postseason games as well. So this just feels a lot like a victory lap. Congratulations, Austin, on becoming Colorado's all-time passing touchdowns leader. This guy is a leader on and off the field. He is very level-headed, and he is the best quarterback in Colorado right now. Additionally, on Record Watch, Austin Madreski is only 549 yards away from taking the all-time passing yards record for a career as well. So he is just having a phenomenal season here to close the gap on all of these, records, as well as putting himself in a great position for his career. I mean, he's just been an electric, player since his freshman year, and so that is also translating as well for his career on that front. He would also end up finishing probably top 10 in career completion percentage if he keeps up his numbers this year, just because he's currently sitting at 68.9% career completion percentage. But last year, he was just a little bit further down on that list. So, and I think it's like you need a certain amount of attempts. So that's probably where that comes in. As far as completions go for his career, he only needs to complete 4 more passes to become the all-time completions leader in Colorado passing high school football history. So he's got that going for him. And, he's also going to do it on pretty solid volume here, as he is, I don't know if he's going to end up passing the all-time passing attempts thing. He's just been so efficient this season. And he still would have to pass another 153 times. So only 4 more completions to become the all-time completions leader, but he would need another 153 attempts to become the all-time attempts leader. Let that sink in on that efficiency and just how historic of a season he's currently having and how historic of a career he's currently having. It's just honestly been amazing to watch. Those are the major records that I have been keeping an eye on here. So if there is, more that you think we should be keeping an eye on, let us know. Granted, I don't think that he is going to break single season records with, he's going to have more than last year, but currently the record for that is 56, and he's sitting at 41, so he would need 15 touchdowns through just a couple more games, and I don't really know if that is in the cards. And as far as passing yards go, also not necessarily what he's aiming for. But if you're throwing a lot of touchdowns, not a lot of interceptions, and completing a lot of passes, you're playing winning football. And this team is very, very well balanced on all fronts. And, I think it starts with Austin and just the kind of guy that he is. And, on the next level, I think that he's going to be a great fit wherever he goes, and he's just any college program would be lucky to have him, and I'm really glad that he stuck around in Colorado, and Colorado is really lucky that the Madreskis are here and that Austin is here to create this legacy. Once again, on behalf of the entire podcast, Austin, huge congratulations, and thank you for what you've done for Colorado football, and we're excited to see how the rest of your season goes. And now, finally, we get to my Maestro segment here. This is the Playmakers of the Week, brought to you by Code Red Coaching. Visit CodeRedCoaching.com, where the grind to greatness starts with the mind, and enhance your mental tools. If you're trying to be like these Playmakers of the Week, you need to reach out to rosecj.6599@gmail.com, or just go ahead and check out CodeRedCoaching.com and get connected with our guy Cody Rosenthal so that he can have you ready to perform like these very athletes here. The first athlete on this list here, or the first classification that I'm going to go through, is the 1A classification. We had submissions such as Christian Thompson from Yuma, 6 carries, 74 yards, interceptions, and 3 tackles here. From Ray, we had Samuel Meisner, 15 carries, 139 yards, hat trick touchdowns, 8 tackles, 2 TFLs, and a forced fumble. We had Daniel Hoggard of CSCS, 15 carries, 107 yards, and 4 touchdowns. We had Trey Cardwell from Buena Vista Senior, 12 carries, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 reception, 15 yards, 3 tackles, 1 for loss, and a fumble recovery, as well as Demetrius Martinez of Jefferson, 13 of 26, 220 yards, 4 touchdowns to 3 picks. Meanwhile, he also ran for 145 yards and a touchdown. The selection on behalf of Phoenix is going to be submitted to be Samuel Meisner here. This guy has been in running for Playmaker of the Week probably close to 1 million times, and he is going to break through following his 139-yard, 3 rushing touchdown, 8 tackle, 2 for loss, 1 forced fumble performance over Lyman. Go ahead and listen back to Phoenix's segment where he gives full details. On the 2A level, we have submissions such as Hunter Hirschfeld of Sterling, 2 receptions for 64 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 tackles, and 1 pass deflection in a blowout win over Arvada. Jacob Artsberger of the Academy had 186 rushing yards, a hat trick of touchdowns, 9 tackles in a win over Weld Central. Graydon Buchanan of Gunnison had at least 180 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns in an upset win over Pagosa. Taylor Hayes from the Basalt Longhorns had 100 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, 56 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 tackles, 2 picks, and 43 kickoff yards, as well as a partridge in a pear tree in their win over Moffat County. Grayson Eisenhart of Coal Ridge had 16 tackles, 1.5 for loss, a sack, and a pick in a win over Middle Park. Cash Alschwager here had 220 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and 5 tackles for the program's first ever win over Eaton. Please be sure to listen to Gideon's recap of that game for more details. And last but not least, submitted was Logan Mayle here of Inglewood, 15 tackles and 3 sacks and a forced fumble in a loss to Strasburg. The selection is going to go to a victor here. That is Taylor Hayes of Basalt here, literally just doing everything you could possibly want. 4 total touchdowns, 2 interceptions, running the ball, catching the ball, forcing tackles, forcing turnovers. Nothing he could not do in Basalt's win over Moffat County. That's the 2A Playmaker of the Week on behalf of Gideon Egner here is Taylor Hayes of Basalt. Now, Coach V here only had 2 nominees here for 3A Playmaker of the Week, one being Dolphka Lewis of Pueblo East, the other being Benson White of Conifer. Now, while Benson went 15 of 22 for 165 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, as well as 144 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns in their win over Wheat Ridge, Coach V is going to give the edge here to Dolphka Lewis here, 13 of 26, 209 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, so just 1 pick, as well as 2 rushing touchdowns in their upset win over Pueblo Central. So a couple of QBs pulling off some big upsets over, crosstown rivals here to get the job done. But this one, Dolphka Lewis just narrowly getting the edge, the Pueblo East QB. Now for 4A here, Gino had a few options here. He had Jacob Foote of Longmont, Gavin Ishmael of Frederick, Aviar Elvira of Palmer Ridge once again, and Colby Holmes as well of Longmont. Now, Colby Holmes, 21 of 24, 383 yards, 6 touchdowns to just 1 pick in the win over Skyline. Elvira here, 290 yards, 2 touchdowns on 23 carries in their win over Vista Ridge. Feed the Beast here is the agenda. Ishmael, once again, 17 of 24, 326 yards, 6 touchdowns to no interceptions, as well as a rushing touchdown in the win over Pooter. But it's going to go to our other cat over at Longmont here, Jacob Foote, the freshman wide receiver, 9 receptions, 233 yards, and 3 touchdowns in that W over Skyline. You know that I am always here for the wide receiver agenda here, but to have this performance from a freshman in a do-or-die game, that is rising up to the situation and is for sure a Playmaker of the Week candidacy. Now for myself, I had a few options here for Playmaker of the Week. Obviously, Zeke Andrews, 18 of 22, 179 yards, and 3 passing touchdowns in this game, while rushing for another 80 was a pretty good submission in Ralston Valley's 35-34 overtime win. There are also a few other options that I really liked here. Jeremiah Martinez was really hard not to select after scoring all 4 touchdowns for Horizon here, running the ball 35 times for 278 yards, 64 receiving yards, over 300 total yards, and 4 total touchdowns. Jack McKeon of Fort Collins ran pretty well, 27 times for 152 yards and 2 scores. Marcus Mosier, once again, is on my radar for Playmaker of the Week. 6 receptions, 160 yards, and half of those receptions ended up in the end zone. But it's just really hard to look at this stat line and not look away, and also watching the pick 6. And that is Carter Daniels here. 25 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and a 51-yard pick 6 here for the linebacker out of Mountain Vista here, helping cap off and just show what this team is all about here. Lots of good options, but ultimately, my 5A Playmaker of the Week is going to be Carter Daniels of Mountain Vista High School. So once again, to run through those, these are the Playmakers of the Week brought to you by Code Red Coaching. The 5A Playmaker of the Week is Carter Daniels of Mountain Vista, selected by myself. The 4A Playmaker of the Week is Jacob Foote from Longmont, the freshman receiver, as selected by Gino Vigil. The 3A Playmaker of the Week is Dolphka Lewis, the sophomore Pueblo East quarterback, as selected by Coach V. For the 2A Playmaker of the Week, as selected by Gideon Agner, it's going to be Taylor Hayes of Basalt. And the 1A Playmaker of the Week, as selected by Phoenix, is Samuel Meisner, the senior tailback / linebacker out of Ray, Colorado, here in their win over Lyman. Once again, the grind to greatness starts with the mind, and these athletes are all about mental performance, as should you be if you want to take that next step. So if you want to go ahead and get started on that, go ahead and visit Code Red Coaching. This could work for individual athletes and performers, professional development, or teams and groups here. He has worked with entire teams before, and there is a way to elevate your game, and part of that is going to be mentally. So go ahead and do that by visit CodeRedCoaching.com or email rosecj.6599@gmail.com. And that is going to do it for this episode of Playmakers Corner Podcast. This has been an absolute blast, but be sure to stay in tune with our content here as girls flag football playoffs are going to start tonight. So go ahead and support your local high school girls in their inaugural playoff season here. Go ahead and stay tuned for first round games that are also on Wednesday, and then be on the lookout for all of our content that's going to flood your page on Saturday, as we will be at every single site for the 4A and 5A flag playoffs, with half of us at the NAAC, the Northern Area Athletic Complex, and half of us at Jeffco / Trailblazer, where there will be games starting way early and going way late, and we got all that coverage for you, as well as a preview and predictions coming out tomorrow, and more content, TikToks, and highlights for y'all as we get further into this flag season and we start to ramp up into the postseason for tackle football. Stay tuned for all of our updates on social media, whether that's at Playmaker Corner on Twitter /X, where we also have live polls right now for our end of the year awards for flag football, and eventually we'll be host to our tackle football award fan poll that you get a voice in. We also are on Instagram at Playmakers Corner. We are on TikTok at Playmakers Corner. And we are on Facebook, Playmakers Corner, 2 separate words. And you are probably listening to this on either Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or maybe even YouTube. You might be listening to this. If you are, go ahead and turn on notifications in your settings. Make sure that you are followed or subscribed to our podcast. Thank y'all so much for giving us such a wonderful state and sport to support and cover. I have been your showrunner, Cody Stauffer, joined by Coach V, Gideon Agner, Gino V. Hill, and Phoenix, signing off.